Here we go with another I Will Never Forgive You podcast. This is episode 6 of season 2. This is probably going to be a long one. It's another character corner assimilation. We're going to try to cover as many different anime as possible. As I say this, I've already pre-recorded 2 of these corners, and they were almost, the 2 of them together were almost 40 minutes long. So I've also already done the Q&A. So we've already got like at least an hour. The Q&A was relatively short. I think there's only like 7 comments I hadn't covered previously. So this is probably going to be long. You'll see how long it is, so there's no reason for me to belabor that. But yeah, this is the August podcast. I'm probably not going to do a second podcast this month, but I definitely want to target a second podcast in September. The reason why I'm not going to do a second one this month is I'm recording this, what I'm recording right now, July 31st. I have less than 24 hours to finish this podcast. So, obviously, there's going to be no early access this time. That really kind of blows because I really like the early access. I just had a rough month, man. I was just behind in all month. Bunch of gigs. I was out of the house like 6 days out of the month, which is a lot, you know. So, you can't just give up 6 days and be able to keep on track. But, most months, you're going to have a couple weeks of early access. Just as the promotion part, in case you want to skip ahead. You're going to have a couple weeks early access for the next month's podcast in most cases. Not this time, but usually. There's also a new podcast out of time that I recorded a couple months ago. There's always going to be a couple mini podcasts I haven't released yet that I'm just waiting to create a new one so I can release the old one. And there's a members only podcast, mini podcast. So if you go up to tier 3, that's the podcast tier, there's a lot of shit there. There's a lot of bonus material if you like the podcast format. For this one, like I said, we're going to be doing some corners, and I like the corners because I do 2 or 3 corners per podcast no matter what. But when the whole podcast is the corners, it allows me to really branch into some niche anime and some smaller anime that I never have time to talk to and that I'm not currently watching. Because what usually happens with the monthly podcast is the corners are going to be shit I'm watching because I see something, I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. Then I see, okay, I want to talk about that. And then I have like 3 or 4 corners, and then it's time to move on to the main topic, right? This time, I got to dig deep and cover some anime I don't use to cover, which is what we did a couple months ago. So, let's go and get into it. This first one is going to be one I do now. Then we'll go to the 2 pre-recorded, and then we'll come back for some more. But this first one is about One Piece. And it's a One Piece theory. I've been doing a deep dive on Davy Jones. And the idea of Davy Jones, because he's basically covered everything pirates that I can think of. He's done Bonnie. There was a Mary something. Was it Mary Bonnie or was that 2 different? I think there was a second female pirate known for her knife work, which I don't think we've seen. Obviously, we have Blackbeard. I don't know that we've had a Bluebeard yet. We've had the Whitebeard. Which I don't even remember if that was a shit starting to run together. I don't remember if that was an original pirate thing or if that's something he created for One Piece, you know, to go along with the Blackbeard theme. But let me see. Every pirate trope you can think of: the rum, the peg leg, the parrot, the eye patch, X marks the spot, the singing. You know, just the whole ambiance of pirate. Like, he's covered almost everything pirates, except one of the biggest things in piracy, one of the first things you ever think about when you think about piracy, is Davy Jones and Davy Jones's locker, right? So, here's where I started. Some of the basic facts of Davy Jones from culture and pirate history. Off the bat, you know, when I started doing this deep dive, they don't really know what the origins of Davy Jones are. You know, which means there's probably multiple origins. And typically, once something first gets written down, it's been in the air for 20 years. Back in that time period, it's been in the air for 20 years. You know how things go. Some people call him the Sea Devil. Sailors historically use the name as a personification of the evil spirit or devil of the deep ocean. That's automatically interesting. Okay, you know. Duppy, a linguistic theory suggests that Davy derives from Duffy, D-U-P-P-Y, a West Indian term for a malevolent ghost. We'll put a pin in that for now. Jonah and St. David. Jones is theorized to stem from the biblical prophet Jonah, who was swallowed by the whale, while Davy may come from St. David, the patron saint of whales. That feels too neat for me. these things don't typically work like that. Like if you look through linguistic history and look at how some of these things are created, any theory that covers the entire thing and neat in a bow, ooh, look, it's Jonah and Saint David, both from the Bible. Like that I could be wrong, but that just doesn't ring true for me. Um, Jones could come from Jonah, but Jones is also just a very common last name back then. And a lot of people would make up their names. Alias Smith and Jones is that for a reason, right? So people didn't, maybe they're wanted in 17 islands, or they're going to be hanged if they ever go back to England. So they have to change their name. So it's not going to be so easy because you didn't have photographs back then. People are usually identified by their name, right? And so if you just changed your name and told people a different name, then it'd be much harder for them to get you. Now they would sometimes you get branded, and then they could use the brand to identify you. But a lot of people back then just made up last names, and Jones was a common one. Smith was a common one, right? So I think Jones is just generic. It's John Doe, you know. So the Jones probably just comes from the fact that the last name Jones was out there. It could have been Davy Smith easily, right? So any other definition of Jones, to me, doesn't ring true for Davy Jones, right? Like, the Jonah, it is an interesting coincidence, Jonah with the whale, but we're not talking about Bible. People didn't, not everybody read the Bible back then, and a lot of people had never been inside a church. And when they hear a preacher talking, they walk the other way. I don't know that, like, a lot of pirates knew anything about Christianity other than the really, really basic shit. Not like us. Like, all of us now understand deep lore, biblical references. I haven't read the Bible in 40 years, and I still remember Ruth and, Abraham and what happened with the son and, all this shit. The Moses and, all kinds of shit. And Jonah and the whale is a fairly obscure story in the Bible. It's more prominent now because we have the Saturday morning, animated series that would give biblical stories, and we went to Sunday school and we heard these things. How common was that back then? I don't know. Maybe for sailors it was common because it's a sailor-related Bible story. And maybe there would be one guy on board every ship who read the Bible every night, two people out loud, because they had nothing else to do. And that's one of the few books that was printed widely that you could have available. So I could be wrong. You think about it, like the Bible's readily available. Everybody's going to have a copy, who can read, just because they want something to read, because they're bored. It's a long journey to go to someplace else. You're in the ship for days and weeks, right? So I could be wrong. I don't think so. So I think the Jones part of Davy Jones that was a very common last name. The Davy part of Davy Jones, who the hell knows? The Duppy theory is very interesting to me. I can see that happening. Then there's the whole thing about the Davy Jones locker, which we all know about. We've all heard. We've all seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Davy Jones is represented there with the locker and all that stuff. It's the bottom of the sea, and it's basically a graveyard, right? So let's look into this Duppy thing. Apparently, a Duppy is a malevolent ghost or spirit originating from West African spiritual traditions and deeply rooted in the folklore of Jamaica, Barbados, and other Caribbean islands, but originated in West Africa, obviously, because people were brought over there, right? Two souls. Traditional belief holds that humans have two souls, one that goes to heaven and an earthbound second soul that lingers near the body after death. Well, isn't that convenient? I'm not here to shit on 4,000-year-old traditions, but if you wanted to explain how ghosts can stay here on Earth, but then also we go to heaven, that seems like a good way to do it, don't you? Now, I don't know the West Africans had even heard of Christianity when they came up with this. So what do they mean by go to heaven? See, this to me seems like some bullshit that Catholics would make up, because they always make up some bullshit to cover the inconsistencies in the Bible, right? But the more I think about it, I don't think that there would be any Catholic influence on Western African traditions, right? So it could be a coincidence. But I don't know. It seems like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, literally, by having one soul to go to heaven and one stay here, right? Transformation. If proper burial rites are not completed within 3 days, the lingering soul can transform into restless, harmful Duppy. Okay. Duppies can manifest as shadows, everyday people, or terrifying creatures like the fire-breathing, chain-rattling, rolling calf. Jesus. Cultural impact. They are said to become active mostly at night, bringing misfortune, fear, or physical harm to those they encounter. There's a certain offshoot of the religion where those people are historically believed to have the ability to summon or manage deputies, kind of like how in our traditions, Catholic priests can exorcise demons. This is their version of that, right? So, a duppy is a demon with two souls. Separates the souls. One stays here, one goes to heaven. That's interesting, right? So, going back to the original Davy Jones thing, some people think maybe the Davy part comes from Duppy. I don't know. Again, I think that's another linguistic coincidence if you look at it. Because nothing there was talking about the ocean. They were talking about what's happening on land because West Africa, like they were mostly landlocked. They weren't really going out they didn't have sailing ships. So their traditions are going to involve the ground and land. So just because some people on an island have something called Duppy and then you say Davy and those sound similar and they're both malevolent spirits, all of a sudden, they're connected? I don't think so. I think Davy, I don't know where the name Davy came from. It could have come from this. But I don't know that we can get much there. I would love to weave the Duppy thing into the Davy Jones One Piece theory. So that raises a question. Would the One Piece author also love to do that? Because if I was writing a story and I looked up Davy Jones and just was kind of spending an hour on the internet, just what is Davy Jones, what's some of the origins, what are some of the theories, and you run across this Duppy thing, I would incorporate that into the Davy Jones thing because you don't hear about that every day. I've been hearing about Davy Jones all my life. I've never heard of a Duppy. This is the first I've heard that Duppy could be related to a Davy Jones. So I would do that. I would make an overt connection. I would make Davy Jones a Duppy, right? As a writer. Would the One Piece author do that? Did the One Piece... I assume the One Piece author does his research. I mean, he probably does deep dives on everything he references and everything he does. And connects things. And maybe not in an overt way. But I'm sure if he ever brings a Davy Jones character into the modern day story, then he will have run across this Duppy thing. Now, would he incorporate it into his version of the story? I don't know. It'd be tempting. So that's my question. Do I think he would do that? Because I don't think there is a real life connection. It almost doesn't matter even if there is a real life connection because we're talking about a fictional story. What do you want to base your fictional story on? I don't think there's a real life connection, but I think any author doing research today could make a connection now, right? So, that is something I have to think about with this theory. I'm doing this theory in real time, by the way. I've done my basic research. I have some initial thoughts, and now I'm trying to form it together in real time, which is, it's not going to be a fully baked theory. It's kind of like I'm workshopping it in front of you, and then, we can have some back and forth on it. It's just a theory. I mean, we're just theory. I don't give a shit if I'm wrong, because I probably am. And I'm also late to the theory party. People have been theorizing about this show for 15, 25 years. And Davy Jones was first mentioned back in episode 208 as a historical figure or something. There's something called the Davy Back Fight, where you have a contest between two pirate crews and they can steal each other's crew members that way. That doesn't seem to be part of any Davy Jones lore that we know of in our time period, in real life. But it's something in the lore of the show. And so clearly there was a Davy Jones who existed in the past. Apparently way back in the past. I didn't want to look at that too much because there could be future revelations in the next 2 years of the manga talking about Davy Jones. I think Davy Jones is going to somehow impact the plot at some point or another, which is why I'm doing this theory. Probably is just background information. But if he goes with the Duppy theory, then Davy Jones could have died 1,000 years ago, but then his spirit could still be here on Earth as well, One Piece Earth. So you could have Davy Jones as a past thing, background information, but then also have him in present day. If there's a specific island he's tied to, you go to that island, you can talk to him. It's what I would do. It'd be a good way to get into some flashbacks from 1,000 years ago because there's no other character. Like, you could just do flashbacks, but this show has never done that. This show has never had flashbacks without somebody who was there being present in that episode, alive, currently. The Kuma flashbacks was before he lost his memory, it died, essentially. Any flashback you mention, somebody was there. Or they present it as historical information somebody's reading a book. Those are the only two ways they do flashbacks on this show. So, if you have Davy Jones's second ghost lingering here on some island somewhere, he can give you flashbacks to the Void Century and before. The other way to do that is with Black Hoodie, right? Because he's probably the only other person who was there. I don't think the elders are old enough. We've now seen how they can be promoted, and they can be killed off and then somebody else promoted. That is a recycling process. Probably happens every couple hundred years. Maybe there is a lifespan limit on these guys, these elders. Maybe 300 years, maybe 400 years. The Void Century is 800 years ago. So I don't think any of these current elders were alive in the Void Century, except for maybe Black Hoodie, probably. So how Swinger get flashbacks? Also, you look at Davy Jones as a sea devil. Well, devil fruits. It would be a natural. I'm sure there's probably a million theories that Davy Jones was the first person to eat a devil fruit, was the first evil person to eat a devil fruit, the first person to use devil fruit powers for evil. Was maybe he created devil fruits? I'm sure those theories abound. Because he seems to be back in the past. Davy backfights a very long-standing tradition. So he probably was alive before the Void Century. And my theories about that and devil fruits and all that stuff from the mural. Is it possible Davy Jones could somehow be hidden in the mural somewhere? Maybe. He could be one of the creatures even, But a sea devil, right? That's interesting. They specifically call him a sea devil. And, you have the whole thing about the devil fruits that can't be going to the ocean, right? What if there's, a lot of times in Magic, there's one exception that proves a rule, right? What if there's one fruit power that you can go into the ocean with? Like the ultimate fruit power, the One Piece, What if the One Piece is just the original fruit? I've always said it's knowledge, and you can still do that. But what if the One Piece, besides not treasure, not knowledge, but the ultimate devil fruit? The all fruit, the One Piece, the one ring that rules them all. There's more than one ring in Lord of the Rings. There's like 11 human rings and some elf rings and the Wraith Riders rings and all this shit. And then you have the one ring that rules all the rings, right? What if you have the one fruit that rules all the fruits? This fruit, if you eat it, the One Piece, the one fruit, if you eat it, I had to make sure I'm still recording because I feel like I'm cooking right now. If you eat it, you can have any fruit power that exists on Earth. Anybody's fruit power. You can do it. Invisibility, cloning, rubber, fire, everything. Every fruit power that exists, you can switch back and forth. You just select, you do your mental Rolodex, okay, I want to use this power right now. You only use one at a time, but you can use them all. Or the One Piece, the one fruit, gives you power over anybody who has a fruit power. Like those people are yours to command, or you can freeze them, or you can take away their powers. You can maybe give people powers. The one fruit could mean a bunch of things. It can mean all this. Everything I've said, it could be. Maybe it could do all that. Maybe you can walk into the ocean and you're fine. The one fruit, the One Piece, right? I think I'm cooking. That's an interesting theory. So you could go that direction. That's a whole separate thing. I wasn't even planning to do that. The idea of a One Piece being a devil fruit is not something I've ever thought about before. But it's possible One Piece is the ultimate devil fruit. Wouldn't that be crazy? All right, well, let's put that aside. I'm excited by that, but let's put that aside. You could go the route Davy Jones, the Sea Devil, is the origin of this devil fruits, is the first person to eat a devil fruit, is a person who, the first evil person, the first person to use devil fruits for evil. Or maybe if we go with our God theory, that like he killed the god, that then became all the devil fruits. You know, the god's body exploded and became a bunch of devil fruits or something, or they ate the organs and then that became fruit later, you know. But that's obvious, right? That's the first thing, literally the first thing anybody who looks at this thinks of. Davy Jones, sea devil, devil, fruits. It takes you 3 seconds to come up with that. Do we think the author is going to do a theory that takes 3 seconds to come up with? I think he's going to subvert expectations with this. That Davy Jones is not the first person to do devil fruits. He's not evil. He's not an evil person. He could be a duppy. When he died, part of his soul went to heaven, and the rest of us here lingering on an island. He can tell us all this when we reach him. Maybe he's there at the island, the Laughing Tail, whatever the hell that island is called, where the One Piece is. You can talk to him, and then you can go to the One Piece, right? Maybe that's the resolution of everything. But what in the past? What if he wasn't evil? What if he wasn't a devil, the sea devil? What if he wasn't a monster? There's a monster wiki. Apparently there's like a monster wiki where you can look up any historical, mythological monster, you know? There's an internet database called the Monster Wiki. You can look up any possible monster. So Sam and Dean would really be, they could just hit this database and find out whatever they want from any creature they're hunting, right? Because half of that show is them trying to figure out how to kill something. Because, you got to read the books. How do we kill it? Well, there's a Monster Wiki. It wasn't very helpful with Davy Jones. It was just a bunch of regurgitated shit and wild-ass theories and shit and a lot of movie references and stuff. So that didn't help me too much. But he's in the Monster Wiki because he's considered a monster. And the Sea Devil and all this other shit. So what if you subvert expectations and he was the first Joy Boy? The very first one. I think the one that we know before Luffy wasn't the first Joy Boy. The one that was hanging out with the robot and everything. I don't think he was the first Joy Boy. I think there was a Joy Boy before 1,000, 2,000 years ago or whatever. Then there was the one we've heard of, and then there's Luffy, right? I think there's been 3, because the rule of 3 is a cool rule, right? I think Davy Jones was the first Joy Boy. Now, maybe he was the first person to take a fruit power, or maybe but I always believed that Joy Boy was a response to tyranny via fruit powers. Right? I think the mural suggests that. So, somebody was using fruit powers to terrorize the population, enslave the populations, and then a Joy Boy rose up as a rebellion and defeated these people. And he probably succeeded and lived, where I think the one we've heard of with the robot, he failed and died. And that's why we have an oppressive government now. If he had succeeded, we wouldn't be currently living under an oppressive government. So, I think Joy Boy 1 succeeded, but then evil comes back around in 1,000 years. Joy Boy 2 failed, and then Joy Boy 3, Luffy is going to succeed. I think that's how, the broad strokes how that worked. I think the first Joy Boy was Davy Jones. So, that's my somewhat elaborate and convoluted theory. Another corner that's gone on too long, but that's what I think. Let me know what you think. We can workshop it. Like I said, I just pulled this straight out of my ass. We had a bonus second theory about the all fruit, the One Piece all fruit. Let me know what you think of that as well. Coming up next, we're going to have 2 Black Clover corners. The first one is a Black Clover / Naruto corner, where I talk about both shows, compare and contrast those 2 shows. And then the second one is another Black Clover corner, which turned out really long. So enjoy that, and I'm going to come back in here with another corner for something else, which I haven't even thought of yet, in a few minutes. So this is kind of a combined Black Clover Naruto corner. I'm also going to be doing a specific Black Clover corner, so this is going to be a pretty Black Clover heavy podcast, at least as far as the corners go. But this first one is about both shows. Here's the thing. Back in the day, in case you haven't seen Naruto, and I'm going to keep this vague, but if you haven't seen Naruto and you plan to watch Naruto, especially the Naruto Shippuden, the second part, you might want to skip ahead. Just these are marked so you can just go to the next corner. Just scrub, I guess I call it. Scrub forward, see the next corner and go to that. All right, for the rest of us. Shippuden ended with a massive war between all the major villages, nations, I guess they call them, and the big bad. And they've been building the big bad for quite a while. And it was interesting because they had the big bad was kind of layered. It was at first we think the big bad is this one guy, part of an organization. I think it was called Pain. He's part of an organization, a secret society who's against all. They don't have a nation. They're just against all the other nations, right? So they're Brotherhood without banners, essentially. They are a group of people that, where if you look at the geopolitical situation of the rest of the show and the universe within the show, everybody else is nations. They're little villages that have a corporate structure, they have a power structure, culture, bureaucracy. They have people pushing papers, and they're making sure the trains run on time, and food gets to everybody. They're villages. I'm a little vague on the population of the villages, but probably 10,000 people maybe for the big major villages. 20,000, something like that. Fairly large population, considering the technological level of ninjas, essentially. We're probably talking about industrial Japan, maybe pre-industrial Japan style cities, right? And they have ninja forces. And so they have like local police who protect the village and keep order, and keep criminals away from the village and keep order. And then you have the ninjas that are like the military force, paramilitary force, essentially. They go out on missions and they do shit, right? Well, this opposing force, they don't have a nation. They don't have a city. They don't have a population, bureaucracy, culture, any of this stuff. They just have the military force. And so we don't know what their goals are, but they've taken over a city and they're expanding their reach and their power and all this stuff. Okay, so they have a leader called Pain. So Pain gets defeated, and come to find out, he had just been given power by somebody else. And there's somebody above him who's kind of in charge. And I won't go through all the convoluted machinations of that, but like that guy who was in charge was actually pretending to be somebody else. We won't go into all that. He's the next guy in charge. Okay? So he has a mask. We don't know his face. But he has a very specific voiceover actor. And so he is the next guy, right? He's the one in charge. And then when they defeat him, it's almost like a season of 24 where you keep going up the boss chain until you get to the big boss. But we defeat the guy that we think is in charge of everything. And in the course of doing that, we find out he's actually a childhood friend of one of our major characters that turned evil. And they're like, wow. So that's really cool. Okay, so the big bad wasn't Pain. It was a childhood friend who had taken on a new persona, kind of like Anakin with Darth Vader. He had taken on a new persona. And eventually you defeat him, and you put him back in touch with his good side. And then so it's a very Star Wars thing where, Vader turns against the Emperor and all this stuff. So you get him back in touch with his good side, and he goes away. But come to find out, he wasn't the childhood friend. He was actually possessed by this ancient ninja from 1,000 years ago. Okay? So this ancient ninja from 1,000 years ago is the one who's the big bad. All along. And then we fight him. And eventually it turns out that he thought he was in charge. But actually there was another guy who was using him as a patsy. And each one of these other people kind of thought they were in charge too, by the way. Each person thinks they're in charge, and there's actually somebody above them using them, right? But the 1,000-year-old ninja wasn't in charge. There's somebody else that was actually in charge above him. But turns out that somebody else who's actually in charge above him wasn't in charge either. It was a god was in charge. So this ancient god, the source of all magic and all power, is the big bad. But we had to work our way up the boss chain to get there, okay? So it's layers within layers, wheels within wheels. This person's in charge. No, it's not this person. It's this person. It's this person. And at the time, I got a little sick of it. I was like, God damn, man, why do we keep having new villains? Why don't we just have one villain and just it takes longer to defeat them? Maybe it'd be better if you had these lieutenants who were in on it. They know they're lieutenants. And we know there's this big bad, but we have to defeat the lieutenants before we get to the big bad. Why was it all these reveals? Why was it all these twists? Why did you have 5 twists? Just make them lieutenants, and they're hard to beat, but you have to get through them to get the big bad, the god. And maybe you can use the final human, and we think that's it, and then you do 1 twist instead of 5 twists. If you do 1 twist, that would make sense. It was clumsy. It was ill handled. It wasn't handled very well, and I thought it was sloppy, and it felt like they're pulling out of their ass, and they hadn't planned it from the beginning. So I would give them a B minus. You know, it was okay, but it could have been a hell of a lot better, and it certainly wasn't great. So that's what Naruto did. Black Clover had kind of the same thing going on. Now, again, if you haven't seen Black Clover and you're going to, and you don't want to be spoiled on plot details from, I don't know, about 30 episodes ago, somewhere around there, go ahead and jump forward to the next corner. You can still get your Black Clover content because I'm going to do a separate Black Clover corner. So, Black Clover essentially did the same thing. First, we think it's this will sound familiar, a group of magicians who don't have a nation. Even though there's all these nations that are kind of at war with each other, they're doing a kind of a Cold War thing. You have this terrorist group who doesn't belong to any of these nations, kind of the Brotherhood without banners, and they have evil intentions, and they want to take over this kingdom that our characters are part of, right? Come to find out, there is actually an elf behind all this. And, you know, there's this whole thing I won't get into where it's like the elves have been slaughtered years ago. But that's actually important because here's the thing. Here's the difference between Black Clover and Naruto. Black Clover established a mystery. They asked a question early on in the series. Naruto didn't ask a question. They had no hint. They had nothing that's like, hey, all this makes sense except what about this? Naruto never did that. They should have. If they had done that early on, none of that would have felt like an ass pull. It wouldn't have felt like you just made this up at the last minute and sloppy and rushed. Black Clover, obviously inspired by Naruto, decided to actually do this in a coherent way that makes sense, and that's really badass. They asked a question. The question was, what happened between the humans and the elves 1,000 years ago, however long it was? Something happened. Suddenly, the humans just attacked the elves and exterminated them. That never sat right with me. It didn't make sense. It's a question they asked. What happened? They weren't specific. They didn't show a bad guy human behind it. And the elves assumed that the humans were just doing it, but they didn't really do that. So we don't know. But they asked a question early on. It's that question lingered and it sat there. And it just kept sitting in the corner whispering the whole time. What the hell is going on? None of it made sense. Most of it made sense, but that one part didn't make sense. And that's what you got to do if you're going to do this kind of convoluted, you know, wheels within wheels shit. Is you have to ask a question early on that throws everything into question. So, it wasn't this human terrorist group. It was an elf, right? Who wants to raise all the other elves and then destroy humans as revenge for this, you know, massacre. But come to find out, it's not the elves. One of the elves is possessed. And come to find out that elf was possessed by a devil, you know, kind of like a god. Kind of like what Naruto did without as many steps. They didn't have as many different people. They had a few. Wait, it's not this, it's actually this. Wait, it's not this, it's actually this. Wait, it's not this, it's actually this. They did it 1 or 2 times fewer times than Naruto did. So, once they talked about the devil, and then you find out the devil manipulated and possessed the humans to attack the elves, that the humans didn't attack the elves, it was the devil that was behind it. And the devil was playing both sides. He was working both sides of the equation, right? Once you realize that question that was asked near the beginning of the series suddenly makes sense. Wait a minute. That's what that was. And because you raise a question, and you answer the question with your twist, it all fits together. It doesn't feel like an ass pull. It doesn't feel rushed. It all makes sense. You raise a question early, you answer the question with your twist. Think about all the best twists you've ever seen. The best twist you've ever seen in any kind of media, books, movies, whatever, it answers a question either you had in your mind, you should have asked, Sixth Sense, the twist answers a question that you had all along. There's a couple things that didn't make sense. It answers all those questions. Those questions were there the whole time. You know, what was that Richard Gere movie with Edward Norton? This is a movie, I think Edward Norton might have gotten an Academy Award for this performance. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of the movie. And I won't say any more because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But even saying there's a twist is kind of a ruin, but we've already introduced it now. So, and plus I don't remember the name. But there's a twist there that answers a question you had the whole time, right? Every good twist answers a question you had the whole time or you should have asked. And when you rewatch it, you're like, wow, why didn't I ask that question? And this does that. The Black Clover twist does that. The devil caused the war between two of them. And that's one component, that one simple mechanic of asking a question early and then answering the question with your twist is why Black Clover nailed their series of twists, their boss chain, going up the ranks of the boss chain, nailed it. Where Naruto fell short of the mark, in my opinion. That's my compare and contrast of the two shows and how they handle a similar thing. Now, obviously, one show was inspired by the other. If they had both come out at the same time, I would give Black Clover 10 out of 10. Because they anticipated a problem and solved it. Whereas this, I truly believe this part of Black Clover is a response to Naruto. Clearly, the authors read Naruto. Probably seen the anime. And didn't want to make the same mistakes. Probably had the same complaints I did and said, let me do this but do it better. I've done that many times. Let me do this but do it better. Let me do a body swapping show or movie or story, and they don't carry their memories with them because memories are fucking biological. Memories are biological. You cannot carry your memories to a new body. So how many times have I talked about that? And so that bothers me. So if I'm gonna do a body swap episode, I'm gonna address that and show what would actually happen if we switch consciousnesses. We would retain our body memories. So how can we overcome that? Like that's the interesting thing. So anyway, I'm sure this author had kind of that response. We're sitting there watching this Naruto stuff. You didn't set any of this up. You didn't ask a question to answer it later. What is the point of this? Other than to just drag the story out a little bit longer. Which is what it did. Each time you introduce a new villain, then you get a couple more episodes out of it, right? Because you defeated this guy, but no, it wasn't really him. He's got somebody else, right? So you have to be writing to a purpose. You have to have a purpose of all this shit. So those are my Black Clover / Naruto thoughts. Now I'm going to get into the just the Black Clover part of things. Okay, so let's do our Black Clover focus corner here. Now, this is obvious, probably, and it probably for comedic effect, but I've noticed in Black Clover more than I've noticed in almost any other anime is like the gender norms are so reinforced in Black Clover. Like all the women just sit on their asses and wait for the man to initiate things, and there's a lot of comedy that comes from that. But also, you know, I want to. The reason I'm bringing this up at all is because, Japanese believe in gender norms, especially when it comes to their media. Duh. It's going to take a while. Like, I know that the things have progressed and they've gotten more progressive in their society and their culture. I'm not here to shit on the Japanese. I don't know enough to shit on them. But my own stupid wandering around the bull china shop American, male opinion, white person male opinion is, it seems like they're a little backwards with their gender norms. Just for having never visited Japan, like I said, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. It just seems that way. It seems like women stay in the house and do the cooking and cleaning, and men go out to work and make the money and come back. And men should always pay for the meals and dates, and you never go Dutch with the date. Men ask women out. And that's it. That's just the way it is. But we haven't always seen it that way in all the anime I've watched. Some of the anime seems very progressive. And this seems very old-fashioned. And like I said, I think it's to a great comedic effect. Because they're also stressing the stereotypes of men are morons. And they don't understand signals. Which I will say, I wonder if that is right. Because in my experience, the mistake men make is they think every woman's interested in them. Not this woman who's clearly interested in me and showered me with attention is not interested in me. Very rarely do we make that mistake. Maybe, I'm sure we do, men. We, men, I'm speaking for myself, but, a little more broadly for all of men. Because how would I know? Say there was a woman that sometime in my life had a crush on me, and she never told me, and I didn't know it. I wouldn't know it. So I can say I've never had a woman have a crush on me and me not know it. Because there have been times when they had a crush on me and I did know it, and I talked to them about it. Sometimes it was reciprocal. Sometimes I wasn't interested. Sometimes there was a huge age gap where they were working with me or something, and so I never even considered dating anybody in the filmmaking industry because you don't shit where you eat, right? So I've never, no romance ever brewed on set. But a couple times, somebody would have a crush and it was obvious, and I would talk to them about it, and we worked it out, right? And it was fine. But if one of them had a crush on me and I didn't know, then I don't know. I'm just saying I've noticed the ones I've noticed. So it's hard to prove a negative, right? It's hard to. I don't think anybody ever had a crush on me that I didn't notice. But if I didn't notice, then I wouldn't know, would I? So, grain of salt. But I don't think that's common. I don't think it's common for a man to not know that a woman has a crush on him. I don't think it's because they shower him with attention. The woman wants the man to make the first move in these situations, I guess. Make sure it's reciprocal. What I've always noticed is men think a woman has a crush on them, and they don't. That's what I've noticed. That's why women who work in service industries, like at a grocery store or fast food, hate it when their boss says you have to smile and make eye contact with every customer and make small talk with every customer. Some of these things, those are the orders. Jewelry stores, for instance, I know specifically those are the orders. You come over to the customer, you make eye contact, you smile at them, and you engage them in conversation. And you start off with something personal, like, "Oh, so you're buying this for a family friend?" That not the kind of personal you might think, but just I have it from an actor who I worked at a jewelry store. It's a very small sample size, but it happened. They told her, make eye contact, ask something personal, smile at them, engage them in conversation. She hated it because 75% of the dudes thought that she was hitting on them. And they were, trying to give her their phone number. She's just following orders, man. And so a lot of these women, they just cannot stand that they have to talk to these dudes. Because if you give any of these dudes, it's like a starving dog. And you got one French fry in your hand. And you're walking through your yard, and that starving dog's in that yard. He thinks it's for him, and he's going to come right at your ass. He's going to jump on you. I want that French fry. You brought it out for me. I know you did. Right? So, a lot of women, if they give attention to a large population segment of the male population, especially if they're single, but not sometimes, some of these women that have complained that dudes hitting on them have a wedding ring on, which, maybe the wife died and they just haven't taken it off yet. I don't know, but it's on the ring. It's on the finger. But most of them are single. So that you give them the slightest bit of opening and they're going to think you're into them. Most dudes. So I don't know if it's that way in Japan. I know it's that way here in America. I've talked to plenty of dudes. I've experienced it myself many times. Many, many times. Where I question in my head, is she flirting with me? I never acted on it because I always assumed that she wasn't. But the thought crossed my mind, right? And I consider myself a fairly well-regulated, stable person who's not delusional. Some of these dudes are out here delusional. I've told the story before where I was at a Hooters one time, went into the bathroom, and this guy comes into the bathroom. He's like, "Wow, that waitress wants me bad." And I'm sitting there thinking, there's no effing way she wants you. It's her job to be friendly with you, you moron. God damn, it's just, men are delusional. So, it doesn't ring true to me that we know Asta and Yami for sure have women that have crushes on them that they're not aware of. Now it's possible that Yami's just messing with her. I think it's possible. That could be a twist where he knew the whole time he's just messing with her. Because he is a troll. Like, he loves trolling people. He likes torturing her. And she's a special case. Because I don't think she really belongs in this conversation, the captain of the other two, the blonde woman. Because she's psychotic. She has a psychotic inability to face her feelings. Because if he did tell her, "I'm into you, let's go out on a date," she would run to the 3 countries away. She's already proven that. She just assumed he was going to say that and she ran out of the county. She ran to the next time zone, across the water. So, that's a special case. Because what makes that so interesting is if he was aware of what's going on with her, she would not be able to process that and function. She couldn't handle it. So, what the hell were we supposed to do with that? So if I was Yami and I was aware of how she felt, and I was also aware that if I confessed my feelings to her, assuming I felt the same way, which I think he does, this is just all like this is a fan fiction at this point because I don't know. He seems oblivious. Well, let's say if I was Yami and I did know she was into me, and I also knew that her head would explode and she'd have a stroke and a heart attack at the same time as she's running away. If I confessed my feelings to her, I would troll her. I would play it slow. I would let her slowly get comfortable with the idea that she has feelings for me because she's so psychotic about that, right? So that's, that is a special case. It's absolutely hilarious. It's a lot of fun. The problem is the show also has Asta for sure, and I'm not sure about He never says, why is Charmy acting like this towards me? We don't hear his thoughts. He never says to her, hey, are you sick? You should go to the hospital. Like Uni does with whatever her name is. So he may be fully aware Charmy has a crush on him. He's just not interested, so he's politely just not talking about it. He definitely knows his wind sprite, whatever she is, has a crush on him. So, he actually tells her, leave me alone, shut up, stop talking about that, all that stuff. So he may be self-aware, and we don't know for sure, it's ambiguous. And I'd love to live in the ambiguity of it all. So that's ambiguous. But it's possible he knows and he just, like I said, it's not addressing. So, I don't know about him, but Asta for sure has 3 different women. We've got Noelle. We've got Mimosa. Who's the third woman? Noelle, Mimosa for sure have crushes on him. Noelle's another one that wouldn't be able to handle it. Like, I think if Asta just said to her, hey, I want to go out on a date with you. I have feelings for you. I don't know if she'd run to the next time zone, but she would probably be abusive. And by the way, I've already said on the show, I don't ship that. I don't think that's a good relationship. I think Asta and Mimosa are much better because she's not toxic and she's not abusive. But anyway, be that as it may, I can't remember because, like, for instance, Rebecca she seems open to having something with Asta, but she knows that he's an oblivious moron, so it'll never happen. So I think she's older than the others, so she's more mature about it. So that doesn't count. But as far as the women that clearly openly have crushes on, because for instance, I don't think the underwater girl does at all. I just think Noelle's jealous for no reason. Just like Noelle's jealous of Rebecca, but like Rebecca's mature, and she's not like that. So I don't know. I think it's just Mimosa and Noelle. But so he is super oblivious to all that, and he, for all we know, he's asexual, or he just really is just locked in on what he's doing. And plus, he's 14. Like I said, I was a late bloomer. I may have been 16 before I ever, like I had a girl at a dance at 14, but she came to me, right? So that wasn't something I initiated. So as far as like seeking it out, Asta, left to his own devices, might not seek out a relationship. Now, well, he has this shit with the nun, so I guess he's not asexual, is he? At least he's not aromantic, because he definitely wants a romantic relationship. Now, he may not want the sex part of it. We don't know. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe the reason he doesn't have a problem with that massive age gap, which has to be at least 15 years. He's 14, and she looks the same as she does now when he was a baby 13 years ago. So she was 20 then. Let's say she was 15 when he showed up on the doorstep as a baby. She's now 28 and he's 14. She's twice his age. Your ass needs to be realistic, man. I know my parents had a 17-year age gap, but she was 19, he was 32. Or 34. So, it wasn't like she was 15 and he was 30. So, or 32. I don't know the math. Anyway, point being that, I guess it was 15. 19 and 30. It was a 15-year age gap, not a 17-year age gap. But it kind of relevant to this, right? She was 19, she wasn't 15, right? There's a difference. And even that, they got divorced, right? So, But if he's not concerned with the sex aspect, like he say he's asexual, but he's not a romantic. He wants a romantic relationship. He just doesn't care about the sex. It's okay if she's a nun, and it's okay that she's twice his age, because they're not doing anything physical. It's just a romantic relationship. They may kiss and snuggle, and they arrange each other's lives. They support each other, financially and physically and all this stuff, and they're there for each other. It's a partnership, almost like a business partnership. If there's no sex involved, then it's just like a business partnership. Then the power dynamics of the age difference mean less. Probably not totally though. Like the power dynamics of the age difference isn't just about sex. It's also just about the maturity difference, and the younger person may really get up in their feelings about shit and not communicate, and the older person has to do more work in a relationship. So if you're 28, or say, let's make it a little bit less gross, she's 33 and he's 20, okay, or she's 34 and he's 20, she's 34, he's 20, and they get together. She's old enough and mature enough at 34 that she's not going to fight about the stupid shit. Where he may want to fight about the stupid shit, or he gets mad and just doesn't talk, and then she has to do more work, right? That's a lot of the power dynamics of the age. That's why that matters, as well as like the whole consent thing and all that stuff. But I still believe if you take sex completely off the table, it never happens between these two people. The age difference would probably still drive them apart at some point, just because they see the world different, they're interested in different things, they're in different aspects of their life. It drove my parents apart. The interesting thing about my parents being driven apart, though, was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 5 reasons they got divorced is she didn't want to stop drinking, and he knew if he kept drinking, it was going to kill him. He had to stop drinking. He had stopped drinking in his 20s. He was around 28. He stopped drinking. Then he met her at 34 and started drinking again because she loved to drink and she wanted to party and she didn't want to drink and him not drink. Like, they would go to a bar and he would order a Coke at the beginning of the relationship and she'd be pissed off. Well, you want to drink with me? And she would keep bitching about it and keep nagging about it. And it's the beginning of a relationship, so he's just going to be, okay, yeah, I guess I'll start drinking. And then after 7 years of this shit, he had a big fight with his brother because he was drunk. And him and his brother didn't talk for 2 years. And it was hurting him at work. And they'd already told him in the military and stuff, like, you got to stop drinking because he was a shitty drunk, apparently. I never knew him as a drunk. He was sober the whole time I knew him. Well, I mean, I knew him when I was 0 to 7, but I don't really remember much of that. But he finally came to a point. He was like, look, I'm going to stop drinking and I'm never drinking again. And she didn't want to stop drinking. And she kept bitching about it. And I think on some part of her, and also I think I would like to, I never talked to her about this. I wish I had. But I got to believe she was like, look, he wants to stop drinking and I'm just going to keep him drinking and that's not good for him. And so I need to leave. I think that was part of it. Because drinking was very bad for him and he wanted to stop. And when she left, he never took another drink the rest of his life. So it wasn't the age difference. Other than, because here's the thing though. Mom died when she was 40, but she drank until she died, right? She never stopped drinking. So it's not even like age, like as she got older, she would stop drinking, But, she just never stopped. She couldn't. She couldn't stop smoking either. She wanted to quit both and never could quit either one of them. So it wasn't even their age difference that broke them up. But with Asa and this hypothetical nun relationship, it might be, I had literally never thought about this before, I gotta say. I always just think age different, like, because of my parents, I don't think age different bad automatically. It just depends when you meet each other. Celine Dion meeting this man when she's 13 and they end up getting married. Weird. Not good. There's another case of that. And they were married for like 60 years. I can't remember who it was, but even Elvis with his wife that he had the kids with, she was like 14. Like, weird, man. Even though you don't get married until they're 19 or something, you met them when they were 14. I've told you, I meet these actors, these actresses, when they're 10, 11, 12, 13. A lot of them were 13 and 14 when I first meet them. Now they're in their mid-20s. A couple of them have OnlyFans accounts, and it makes me want to throw up because I can't see them as anything other than that 13-year-old I met. So I don't understand how you can put that out of your mind and see them as the adult they are now. Maybe you can compartmentalize better than that. But one of the reasons I don't talk to them anymore, there's one particular I was really close to. I couldn't stop treating her like a 13-year-old. Like I just couldn't stop doing it. She's 20. She doesn't want to be talked down to, or just, I just kept, I was still in teacher mode because I taught her. I was her mentor when she was 13, 14, 15, 16. I was her mentor. So every time I talked to her, I was teaching her something. Now we're 20, we're on the same level. She's probably surpassed me because she's in college. I never went to college for filmmaking. She's in college for filmmaking. I'm trying to explain shit to her. She's like, yeah, I know. We learned that last year. And so we eventually just stopped talking because I couldn't stop treating her like a kid, man. It sucks. I feel bad about it. She's fine now. She's married and, traveling Europe. I don't know if she's filmmaking anymore. But it's okay. But, like, that's what I'm talking about, though. How do you separate that? How do you be like, okay, now you are a 22-year-old adult. If you meet them at 22, even if there's a large age difference, if you meet them at 22, that's different than meeting them at 13, right? I don't know how you do that. But with my parents having a large age difference, I've always felt a little bit differently because I've seen it. And Dad never dated again after Mom left. Never. He dated after she died. He never dated again after she died. He dated while she was alive because he assumed, I'm just going to kick this bitch to the curb and go back to Mom if she ever wants me. He even said he thought that she would come back when he was old and she would be the one taking care of him. But she died before he got old. So her son, his son, me, took care of him. So in a way, he was right. The love of his life did eventually take care of him through their shared child, right? Because I was there. He was always worried about somebody being there to take care of him when he was old. But I've always felt differently because the day she died, he stopped dating and he never dated again for the last 28 years of his life. Never even considered it. Never mentioned it. Never asked a woman out. Turned down. There was a few. I was there a couple times. A couple women asked him out, and turned them down flat. Not interested. The love of his life had died. She was the love of his life. She was all he truly cared about. He'd had a previous marriage with a previous daughter, and all he cared about was my mom. So I don't give a shit about a 14-year age difference when I saw that was true love. True love. They couldn't live together. They couldn't stand to live together because she couldn't stop drinking and he had to. But man, it was true love. So I'm a little open about age differences. It just, you gotta meet them when they're adults, man. Like, can that just be the bare minimum? And a lot of people can argue even 19 or 20 or 21 as an adult, but we gotta draw a line somewhere. Please, just meet them as an adult, man. I don't know. I'm really belaboring this, but just, the only reason I'm talking about this so long is I'm really fascinated with the idea that, because it never crossed my mind for an asexual person who is not aromantic, could that work? If we take sex off the table, could it actually work? I don't know. I mean, I'll do some more thinking on it. I think it possibly could. So, but that recontextualizes this whole shit with Asta and his nun. Because it's been super annoying and stupid. But if he doesn't have, like, the actual desires for her, he only has the romanticness of it. I want to be with this person. I want to be around this person all the time. I want to be really close to them, closer than anybody else is. Some affection, some kissing, some snuggling. Nothing else. I don't care about the other shit. She can still be a nut and do that, even if it's not an official signed to paper marriage. That could happen, right? And it'd probably not be toxic. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. I had no intention of talking about this long. But mainly, just to put a button on this because I have to go. I don't like the gender norms being stressed in this show, but I wonder if that is just for the comedic aspect of it. Because we only have one clear-cut case of it happening. That's with Noelle and Asta, and then Mimosa and Asta. Noelle's a lot more obvious about it. And also the fact I don't believe men wouldn't notice, right? So those are the two things I want to say here. We got off on a whole nother tangent, but, that's how we do it here on this podcast. So this is the Demon Slayer corner, and I have a question. what is going on with these Kasuga, or however that's pronounced, crows? These messenger crows. What's going on with them? I ran across a theory on Reddit the other day. In the headline, I just saw the headline. I didn't actually delve into the theory. But the headline said, are the crows part demon? Like, back in the day, some demon blood got introduced to some crows. We've never seen demon blood interact with animals. I guess the results would be unpredictable. Probably just kill them, You gotta be strong. Like, not even every human can handle the demon blood, right? So why would a lower being like an animal, lower just in a sense of complexity, ability to withstand shit, why would a lower being like that be able to withstand the blood? It probably wouldn't. But I think the idea is that the demon blood was introduced into the crows and they became different. Maybe a little slightly evil. I've always been a little creeped out by the crows. Not necessarily evil, but it just gave them powers they wouldn't normally have, I don't subscribe to that theory, but it made me wonder, what the hell are the crows? What is going on with the crows? Most likely, it's just a quirk that separates this anime out of universe. It's something that separates this anime from other anime, probably inspired by A Song of Ice and Fire. Is A Song of Ice and Fire the first thing that featured, the first story that featured birds sending messages back and forth? Probably not. Song of Ice and Fire began in 1996. I don't remember when the first Harry Potter book came out, but I feel like those two authors came up with the idea separately, most likely. They both probably got their inspiration from some previous story that I'm just not aware of. So I could probably look up, do a deep dive. I don't have time right now, but do a deep dive on the history of birds sending messages in some form or another. Harry Potter is just they're holding a letter. In Song of Ice and Fire, they're holding a letter. In this, they've evolved to where they can talk, but I'm sure there's been all kinds of things like that. For instance, in Norse mythology, going back at least 1,500 years, there is the idea that all the crows in the world would report back to Thor or Odin, I think it was Odin, every night, everything they learned. And that's why he was omnipotent, right? And I think he had a raven on his shoulder, but the crows reported to him. Or it could have been a big crow on his shoulder, but I think it was a raven. And then every night the crows would report to him. So anywhere there was a crow in the world, any information now, if there's two deer having sex, they're not going to report that, I assume. Maybe he's into that. But anything of importance. So he would know pretty much everything that's going on in the world. That's from 1,500 years ago. How would they report? I guess it would talk. Makes you wonder. I did look. Are there any crow mythology in Japan, Korea, China, any of the Eastern mythologies? Is there crows? And there's only like a couple examples. There's something about a three-legged crow, and we don't have any three-legged crows here in this, so there wasn't that. And there's something about somebody turning themselves into a crow or something, or becoming a crow. And nothing about messages, right? Nothing about, I didn't look, are there any mythology of any birds in the Eastern culture, of any birds passing messages? I didn't look that far. I just looked at crows to see if he had any groundwork, any framework, or anything he could have been inspired by from, that mythology. The only mythology in the world that seems to possibly have inspired what's going on here in Demon Slayer is Norse mythology with the crows and Odin and everything, right? That seems very similar, although the crows here aren't like gathering information and returning to one source. They are, each one's assigned to a specific Demon Slayer, and it's their cell phone, essentially. It operates like a cell phone. That's probably what the author probably was as simple as this. I need a way for Demon Slayers to get missions without going back home, and we live in a low-tech society. So how do we do this? Well, they have what's the equivalent of a cell phone back in the Middle Ages? I guess a bird, and that's kind of what George R. R. Martin did, although they're not assigned to specific people. With George R. R. Martin, it's kind of like landlines. Imagine there's a castle in the middle of the country, it has one phone. And then there's a castle way up north, 1,000 miles away, and it has one phone. and you can call each other, but you can also call other places in your kingdom, right? But you have to be in the castle. You can't be 20 miles away from the castle and make the call. You have to be in the castle because if you're not familiar with the Song of Ice and Fire, the ravens go from castle to castle. That's all. That's all they do. This raven is trained to go from here to here and back. That's all he does. So they have to have a bunch of ravens for a bunch of different locations. Okay, and their cage has a name of where they go, right? Okay, this one goes to the north. This one goes to King's Landing. This one goes here. This one goes there. And then it'll go, and then you give him a message, and it'll go back. And that's the only place they're trained to go. A couple really smart ravens can be trained to go more than one place. But in that case, so that's like a landline. So I think the author, in this case, decided to, he got the inspiration for a cell phone. It's ingenious if you think about it. How do I turn a cell phone into something because we need a way for them to talk to each other. So how do I turn a cell phone into something we can use in the Middle Ages with magic and low tech, right? How about a bird? It's assigned to this person. Now, I'm unclear on the specifics here. I don't want to get too much of a deep dive, because I'm sure the manga there's 2 other movies come out, so the manga's ahead of the anime. But the anime wiki could still have spoilers on it, because the manga's ahead of it, right? So, I didn't want to look there, but I'm unclear in specifics. Does the crow stay with the Demon Slayer all the time, and then he receives a telepathic message? Or, because sometimes we've seen the crow hang out with the Demon Slayer, but a lot of times we don't see the crow. We don't know where he is. He could be in a tree somewhere, or maybe he went back home. Maybe he delivers a message, makes sure you're going to do what you're told, then goes back, and maybe receives more orders, and then finds the Demon Slayer again once. So it's like a cell phone that kind of doesn't stay with you all the time. So you can't lose it. You can't, like, you fall in the river, you don't get it wet because it went back home, right? Metaphorically speaking. So I think they were rather than being inspired by mythology, they were inspired by cell phones. And I think the Norse thing is probably a coincidence. Although, if you're like me, I'm sure a lot of these authors just read mythology. I used to have a massive book of world mythology, just all the mythologies in the world. It was like this big, this tall, this big. It was had pictures and drawings and maps and stuff in it. It was just a brief guide, this big, a brief guide of every mythology in the world that we know of. And I would sometimes just flip through it. I had that. I had a book of dream imagery, and then I had a book of ancient fables. And then I would just sometimes, if I'm just looking for an idea of something to write, or a creature, or some kind of monster we'd never seen before, I need a monster. I don't know what I want. I would flip through all 3 of them, right? All 3. So ancient fables. Maybe there's a fable about a little troll that lives inside your shoe. And then look at ancient mythology. Oh, well, there's this mythology that's a separate, the fable maybe from Germany. There's a mythology in Native Americans in South America about a little elf that would crawl into small spaces and spy on people, right? And then, the dream imagery, when you got small things looking at you, it means this psychologically, right? So I would weave the 3 things together. So it's this elf instead of a troll, but it lives in your shoe, but it's spying on you, and then what does that mean psychologically? I'm kind of like trying to take it from 3 sources. So it's something new. It's not just regurgitating one thing. I did that a few times, right? I've lost track of those books now, but I used to have those are my 3 go-to books, right? I was relatively well-versed in a very Cliff Notes kind of way of a lot of mythology and traditions from all the cultures in the world, right? You would think any of these guys that write for a living full-time probably are as well. So maybe he was a little inspired by that. Maybe that was a jumping-off point. He had the idea of a cell phone, and then these Norse crows that are just snitching out, nature snitch, seeing things and reporting it back every night. I guess they would all fly to his castle at night or something, like in this mythology, like this idea, and talk to him in person. So, I mean, that's a long flight if you live in South America or, down in South Africa or somewhere, Antarctica or Australia, right? That's a long flight from Australia to Scandinavia. So, every night, you got to do it every night. Maybe if you don't see anything of interest, you don't take the trip that night. But so I don't know how that works. But in my head canon, maybe what he did was the idea of a cell phone, and in these Norse mythology crows, and then something else. Maybe that was where he came up with the crow cell phone, and then he had some idea from some other source I can't track down, whatever it could have been, to arrive at this, right? Possibly, who the hell knows? I mean, a lot of times we don't even know where our inspiration comes from as writers. But it comes from places. We just don't remember consciously where it came from. So, out of universe, out of story, I think it's just a cell phone, and a bird is a cool way to do it. You know, so you need to be able to give missions to these people. And then from there, it just became something that sets your anime apart from other anime, because Bleach doesn't have talking birds, and Naruto doesn't have talking birds. So this makes it look a little different, even though we have swords, and we have the robes, and we're training. We have training montages, and there's magic with swords, and we're fighting evil demons and stuff. You know, still, this is one more thing that sets it apart. We call it color. You know, it colors your fictional universe. It gives it flavor. It's something quirky that just makes it different, unique. It's like the snails in One Piece. The same concept as an animal that you communicate with. It just makes it different. It's cool. These are the kind of shit. These are the things and the details that make these stories come alive to me, because it's not relevant to the main plot. So these people, the Reddit cesspool fans of the day, who just want everything just to be about plot, story, solving mystery, and nothing else, they wouldn't like this, because this isn't something that has to do with the main plot. But like, it just gives it life. It gives it color. It gives it depth, right? Out of universe, that's the answer. It's just something to make your anime look unique and feel unique, and give it more depth, give it more dimension, give it more life, set it apart a little bit. And it solves the issue, the technical issue of how do we communicate at long distances when we're in a low-tech society. Okay, so that is the answer. But in universe, did the author add another layer of something that, you know, says something else, that maybe speaks to a theme of the series, or it will be a plot twist at some point, or reveals something about somebody, maybe about the past, maybe about the demon, ... You know, like, is there something else to it in universe? And that's what I think some of these people with the theories are trying to figure out with the demon blood and stuff. Now, personally, I don't think there is. I think it's just, what you see is what you get. It's just what I said. It's just a cell phone, a colorful cell phone, to make this anime feel different than anybody else's anime. Manga, you know. However, there are some interesting questions raised by the show that I don't know if we're ever going to get answered to. And if we get to the end of the series and nothing comes of it, then it's like I said, it's just their cell phones. But you have the peculiarities of some of the crows. Most of them they have very simple things they can say. They have they're almost like an answering machine. They have or a parrot. You know, a parrot doesn't really talk; it just simulates sound. It doesn't know what it's saying, and you can't elaborate and start combining things and making more complicated messages. So a lot of the crows just seem very simple. Go to Mount Fuji. Go see Fire Hashira, or whatever they're called. Whatever, you know, something simple. And then when you question it, just says the same thing again. So that's most of them. Some of them seem to be able to speak more complex and have a back and forth. And it's, you know, so the ability to converse and talk and deliver messages and maybe even elaborate back and forth and criticize, you know, hey, maybe you should take better care of your sword or something. It's shit like that doesn't affect its mission, but still has a commentary. I feel like there's at least one of them was something like that. Does that speak to like the older the crow is, the more they learn? Maybe the other crows are young, or just some crows are innately more smart than others? Or Is there something dark going on where people are punished by being turned into crows and they spend the rest of their life serving the cause as a crow? Probably not, but that could be a fun theory to have. Also, some of them seem to have a lot of personality, and some of them seem to not have not much personality, which again maybe can speak to seniority, to age. You know, there's also a couple crows seem to have an animosity towards each other. There's one specific scene I remember where two crows are fighting each other, just bickering and I think attacking each other even. Definitely bickering though, for sure. A few of the crows are dressed up. They either have like eyelashes or makeup or jewelry or clothes, but that can be imposed by their masters. Because each crow is dedicated to a single person. Some of those people may want their representative to wear something similar to them or have a flower in their hair or jewelry or so. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember a couple of them have something. It's like, oh, that must be the Love Hashira's crow because it has lipstick on or something. I don't think that has to do anything to do with the origins of the crows or any difference between crows. I think that is just the difference between some humans will put a jacket on a dog and some won't. You see three dogs being walked. One of them is wearing a hat. The other two aren't. You're not saying, well, the dog with the hat is smarter than the other two because the owner is the one to put the hat on the dog. So I don't think the clothing that the crows wear matter. And I don't think any of the jewelry or makeup shit matters. But I wonder if the ability, how much they can say, and their personality, and most of them seem irritable and angry all the time, and if they're emotionally dysregulated, and if they were enslaved into becoming crows as a punishment, kind of like being sent to the wall in A Song of Ice and Fire. You've been found guilty of murder. Either we execute you right here, or you become a crow and you serve the cause for the rest of your life. So if that's happened and you have, rather than be executed, you turn into a crow and you help the cause, I can see where you'd be irritable and pretty much foul-tempered with everybody. So, that's possible. That the more I talk about it, the more I kind of like it, You've been found guilty of collaborating with demons. Either we execute you or you serve as a crow. And you have to serve. Once you become a crow, you're bound by magic to do what we say, and that's it. You can't do anything else. Which can explain why some of them talk so little. Because maybe they're unwilling crows, and so they have to be magically bound and forced to do that. I like it, man. That's a really fun theory. I'm not advancing that as a theory, but it's a nice idea to think about because I think it's hilarious, and it would kind of fit the story for the most part. So, is there something else going on? That's a darker interpretation of the crows? They seem to have differences. They seem to have little personalities. They definitely have emotions. We've seen that in play, and they are creepy. There is something creepy about them, and I think the voiceover choice is made in Japanese. I don't know what it's like in English. But the voiceover performance choices that were made by the actor and the director for each crow, each time, has been creepy. And I think that's intentional. I don't know what it means. But it's fun to think about. So, non-spoilery, if you have anything non-spoiler, if there's any information given in the future from the manga and you've read the manga, don't spoil me. But that said, do you have any thoughts about this or anything I've forgotten about? Is there any differences? Anything else that's different about someone? Is one crow does this and nobody else does this? Is there a pattern that we can recognize? And where does Tanjura's specific cell phone crow fit into that pattern? That's another question, right? So, I don't know. It is a lot of fun to think about, though. So let's now talk about Odd Taxi, which I'm sure nobody on the planet thought I was going to talk about with this episode, or any episode. Well, here's the thing. Odd Taxi is a brilliant, think about a 13 episode, maybe it's 10, 9, something like that. It's a very short run series. Brilliant series. Apparently there's never going to be any more of it. I recommend it to everybody, and there's not much to say about it that I didn't say during my reaction. But I started thinking, and I was like, well, why did they need the animal motif? Which is all I'm going to say. Why did they need the animal? Because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. So there'll be no further Odd Taxi spoilers for this podcast. Why did they need the animal motif? Well, I was looking around and I got a quote from one of the creators. And they said, we felt the dissonance of having these animals doing these things because it's a very dark, gloomy story. Film noir kind of story. Very dark, very gloomy. And he said he felt the dissonance negated some of the gloominess, which I think it did. It absolutely did. Today, I was just drawn to Odd Taxi. I was like, I want to talk about Odd Taxi, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't really have anything to say about it, other than what I'm about to talk about. So I was just sitting there, and I was looking at the pictures of the humans with their animal forms, and just seeing them side by side like that. I felt really happy. I love what that did and how much each person's human form looked like their animal form. That was really well done. The guy is a genius, the artist. Brilliant. The three singers, I guess they were a combination of cats and dogs. I'm not quite sure, but I think at the time I may have thought they were all cats, but it looks like one of them was a dog, right? But they looked like them, and they were cute and tiny, and, it's just the cat motif was hilarious considering what happens in the story, right? But then you got the ape, who's a complete psycho, and then you got the gorilla, and all this. Man, it's just so good, man. Just so good. But anyway, I was like, well, would that work for some other anime I've seen? A gloomy, dark, gritty anime. Would it work as, to just lighten the tone, to do the same thing? We felt the dissonance negated some of the gloominess. So, with animal forms, what dark, gritty, gloomy anime can we turn the people into animals and lighten the tone? I think Attack on Titan would be perfect. And I think Eren would be a weasel. Misaka, was that her name? Miska is absolutely a monkey because she be flipping around and jumping around and all this crazy ass shit, so she would definitely be a monkey. The third guy would probably be a squirrel. He's giving me big squirrel energy. And the big asshole, I think, because his Titan form is kind of like a monk, like an orangutan kind of. That's what his form would be, the asshole. And then one person who was in charge, I don't remember any names anymore, but the guy that we really liked, and we thought he was going to die at one point, and somebody sacrificed to keep him alive. All that guy would definitely be a fox because he was crazy like a fox. So tell me what you think some Attack on Titan animal forms would be. That's one way we could odd taxi up an anime, right? But I started thinking about, okay, well, we've got the animals. So rather than trying to cram animals into every anime I can think of, I'm wondering, is there something else we could do with it? Is there another direction we could take it? Like, in other words, in Odd Taxi, the kind of animal the person was spoke to the personality. Now, they also looked like the animals. So the Weasley older friend looked like, the most Weasley-looking monkey kind of creature that is, the red-tailed, red-tailed ass monkey, whatever that is. And then the fox, of course, was sneaky and double-dealing. And then the cops were mice, of course. It was the whole thing, right? So, there was, I think what he did was, he made the personalities match the animal, and then designed the look of each character so that the human and animal form look like each other. So he worked inside out. He started with the personality, and then made the appearance fit the animal. So if somebody had a cowardly, weaselly, backstabbing, run away from a fight kind of personality, then maybe you'd make it a jackal, right? But you start with the personality, then you make the appearance look like a jackal, so that the human looks like a jackal. So what I got to thinking was, if we don't use animals, what else can we use as a metaphor for a person's personality, right? Because animals have been done. And I came up with two ideas. One is food. So you can make people look like food. Now imagine an anime where it's just food is walking around. Now there was a terrible ass animated movie that was kind of like this. Um, maybe it was Dog Park or something about hot dogs. And the main character, I think, was a hot dog, and he was obsessed with the hot dog bun, who was a woman. And then there was other people were other kinds of food, right? So that kind of worked. But if you go with, let's say, One Piece, and what would the food be? Well, Luffy would be meat, but let's be a little bit more specific. Luffy's flexible. He can take a lot of shapes. He can be served in a lot of forms. So it sounds like ground beef, cow, like ground beef specifically. You can form it into patties. You can form it into a brick. You can form it into meatballs. You can even put ground beef into sausages. It's not as common, but you can do it. So that feels like Luffy, right? Ground beef, very flexible. It's used in a lot of things. So, what would Zoro be? I think Zoro would be crispy bacon. He's appetizing, but he's got a sharp side, and he can be bitter, like if he's overcooked, right? Overcooked, maybe being drunk. Jimby, of course, has to be like just fish, but maybe a specific salmon. Salmon is probably the most everyday man. Every workman, because Jimby's kind of like a workman. He's an everyman. He represents the whole fishman society. And salmon is probably the most common kind of fish, other than like whatever goes in the fish sandwich is a little chopped up fish sandwich. I think that's cod. Cod probably is the most common. But he's a cut above, right? So I really think he should be salmon. What would Robin be? She would probably be beef stew. She's hot. She has a lot of flavors. There's a lot of layers to her. And that's a common Russian dish, which she is very, very Russian coded. So Nami would be something greasy. How about greasy French fries? Or if you know what potato pancakes are, that might be even better. Because you take something bland and you turn it, like leftover mashed potatoes, and you turn them into potato pancakes. So you take something bland, leftover, and you turn it into something much better with a hard edge because you grill the potato pancakes, but greasy. That's Nami. She was left over for dead. She was bland, and then she became a harder person with a sharp edge with her tongue, but she is greasy because she will stab you in the back for money. So that's perfect for her. Sanji is a fruitcake. Enough said. Chopper is one of those, you see them in Chinese buffets. They are basically a balled sugar donut, but it's a ball, right? Maybe like a donut hole is what the equivalent we would think it would be. But it's basically, it's a ball of deep fried flour that has been smothered in powdered sugar. That whatever those are called. And you see them at every Chinese buffet you've ever been to. It's one of their dessert options. And they're really, I always get a couple of them because they're really good. That's Chopper. He's just a big fluffy ball of powdered sugar, deep fried, And Rook, I guess, would be chicken on the bone, bone-in chicken. So, basically chicken wings, I guess. Who am I missing? Usopp. Well, I can't really think of something for Usopp. But you get the idea, right? Using food as a metaphor for the personalities of the characters. I think this is something you could do. You could taxi an anime, maybe it's a new anime you're writing, and use food as a metaphor so they look like food. But in reality, they're still just human beings, but they look like food because you have assigned them a certain food type depending on what their personality is. My food type, what would I be? What kind of food am I? Well, I'm overcooked because I talk too much. Abrasive, so probably super spicy. So I'm probably one of those chicken wings you see on the Hot Ones YouTube series. The bomb, where it's like it punishes people the most. It's abrasive as hell. You know, they'll bite into it and they'll think it's fine, and then just wham, it hits them from the side of their head. They're not even looking right. It gets them. Very abrasive. So that's probably what I am. So yeah, I think food, you could odd taxi any anime you wanted with food. Now the second idea I had was colors. You could use colors. That is a little more dicey because it's a little more obvious, and you could even veer into racism, you know, potentially. If you make brown or black evil, or even yellow, light red possibly, could even, those colors, you know, if you make any of them evil, like a negative thing, then all of a sudden, you know, you're sending messaging that you didn't really intend. So I don't know if colors works too well. But maybe it doesn't have to be like, you know, negative or positive characteristics. It could just be something about their personality. You know, because black could also be like depression, sadness. Brown could be, you know, of the earth, you know, salt of the earth. So a person who just gets up, gets their lunch pail, goes to work, puts in their time, comes home, drinks a couple beers while watches TV, falls asleep in the easy chair. That's a salt of the earth kind of person. That's the kind of person that would, you know, you probably assign the color brown to, I think. So, you know, you could do it that way. I just think colors are kind of limited. You know, there's probably hundreds of colored names with slight variations of color. Is that pink? No, it's like indigo sapphire or whatever. Right? You know, they can assign as many colored names as they want, but we're not going to know what the hell that is. You know, so I think it's probably there's not enough colors in the world to accurately odd taxi an anime with colors, as I talk about it out loud. You know, it's one thing to have thought in my head. Talking about it out loud, I don't think you do it. I think you can do it endlessly with food. So my pizza, they're easy. You know, they say there's no such thing as bad pizza. So maybe the person is like, no matter what they do, no matter what choices they make, they're a good person. So that maybe it can be a slice of pizza, because there's no such thing as bad pizza, right? That, right? Like, I think that you have so much variety, so many things you can do commentary wise with food replacing people, that you could odd taxi any anime you wanted with food, 100%. So yeah, I think that it's an interesting thought exercise. Let me know what you think. All right, so not really a odd taxi corner, but closer to odd taxi than anything else. All right, let's go to my fake strange fake corner. I'm trying to make these quicker because I was like 4 corners in and we were past an hour. I was like, God damn! Like, you know, I'm not gonna be able to get to many corners. Each one's taking half an hour, so I'm gonna try to make these a little quicker. What I like about Fate Strange Fake, and also the whole universe, the whole Fate universe, Swords, whatever it was called, Unlimited Swords, Unlimited, Fate Stay Night, all that stuff, is this idea of myth becoming reality, because they have these heroic spirits. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my read of this, the whole franchise as a whole, big picture, looking at the whole franchise, my read of it is it's really about how we have mythologized people from the past versus what they were really like. And does it matter what they were really like once the mythology has become real? Because I think the mythology becomes more real than what they were. They lived one human life. George Washington lived to be, 50, 60, whatever he was. Mythic figure in the United States. Most people in other cultures have probably heard of him. They couldn't name probably 5 presidents. I can't name any presidents from any other country. I know a couple British prime ministers. That's about it. The president of Germany used to be a woman. Gorbachev style, and I know a few from Russia, one from Germany, probably two from Japan. That's about it, man. That is about it. And then Mayo from China and stuff. So they had to be really badass for me to know the name of any president from another country, right? Any leader from another country. So I'm not expecting anybody from other countries to know American presidents, but if you do know any of them, I'm sure you know George Washington. So he lived 50, 60 years. That was the truth. That was the reality. But now he's had 200 years of mythology surrounding him. I will not tell a lie. Yes, since I cannot tell a lie and will not tell a lie, I did chop down that cherry tree. I did chop down that cherry tree. Horseshit. Complete and total horseshit. There was no cherry tree. I'm sure that some bitch lied. He was a general. Generals lie. Hold that hill. We'll be there to back you up. We'll send reinforcements. Don't worry. Hold that hill. Generals lie. Hell, they were lying when they snuck across the river. Was it the Potomac? Or was it the Delaware River? I don't remember. They snuck across the river in the middle of the night. That was lying. Because the enemy didn't know you was going to do that. So you're being sneaky, right? So he lied. Doesn't matter. Well, to a historical purist, it does. But if it motivates you, if it in any way you want to emulate that person, it doesn't matter. You want to be what you think they are. So who cares what they actually are, right? I mean, they say never meet your heroes for a reason. Because you have this idea built in your head. Well, the chances are very slim that I'm ever going to meet Peyton Manning, right? So it doesn't matter what he's like. I've actually kind of heard he's kind of a dipshit, to be honest with you. He's kind of an asshole. At least he was in college. But I don't want to meet him. I've met very few celebrities in my life. A few just on elevators at the American film market. Just 3 minutes. They accepted me as a peer rather than a fan, so I couldn't act like a fan. Because the American film market, you're there to sell yourself and you're there to sell your movies. So, like, I saw Kevin Pollak was in one of these elevators. He thought I was... Who's that fat-ass filmmaker? God, that pissed me off. He thought, Michael... no. Never remember that son of a bitch's name. Ever. He's a documentary filmmaker. Man, I hate that son of a bitch. I can't figure out how to find out what his name is. I put in documentary filmmaker, and there's like a list of 1,000 of them. So I put in fat documentary filmmaker, because he's fat with a big, nasty beard. And they just got me the people who made documentaries about being fat. So whatever the hell his name is, fuck that dude, man. Anyway, Kevin Pollak thought I was him. So that was bad. Except he gave me an elevator pitch. He's like, yeah, you should do this documentary about my time on the hell was it? Usual Suspects, I think it was. No, it wasn't that. It was something else. Some movie he had done. He wanted this guy to do the documentary of that. Anyway, he was giving me the elevator pitch. And I was like, man, I stopped. I was like, look, I'm not him. I'm like 100 pounds less fat than he is. He's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. It's like, anyway, I've met a few celebrities. Met Jerry Rice at an airport, shook his hand, asked him not to beat the Colts. He says, says, I can't honor your request. He was really nice. But, I mean, like, in death, meet your heroes, right? Like, you don't want to. Because, for all I know, Jerry Rice sucks. Kevin Pollak sucks, for all I know. I've only heard nice things about him. He was nice to me, but, who knows, right? But does it matter when George Washington has been dead for 200 years? If he motivates me to never tell a lie, to admit that I chopped down a cherry tree, or to have wooden teeth, or whatever. The way he inspires me? Apparently he really, really liked the colonial version of pancakes. I think they were called wheat cakes. He loved those. That's one of the reasons he probably had the wooden teeth. He loved those with molasses. And I tried wheat cakes a couple times, and they were really good. They're thin, and they're much more crispy than pancakes. And, they have more body, because it's just a really wheat. It's wheat, but it's also something else, right? Anyway, so he inspired me for a new breakfast thing, because I asked what did George Washington have for breakfast, and that apparently was it, right? That was some, pork. They didn't really have bacon back then, but it was like thick. It was similar to bacon. Anyway, the reality of him, any of these, the further you go back, the less we know. Like, we have some idea about George Washington, but what about Shakespeare? Do we really know anything about that son bitch? Some people are not sure he even wrote the plays. The hell do we know about Shakespeare? Nothing. We know the myth of Shakespeare. That's it. So, wanted this show, this franchise especially, not specifically this show, because this show's kind of almost a parody, but the franchise would rather have the myth take life than the reality take life. Alexander the Great, like the way they portrayed him in the first one I saw, wonderful. And I didn't even recognize that was supposed to be Alexander the Great at first. It's like, damn, so the real Alexander the Great he was an alcoholic and kind of an asshole and probably super driven and a workaholic. Nobody, as a fellow workaholic, nobody wants to be friends with a workaholic. Sorry, man, I'm too busy. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the game. I'm too busy. Your birthday, maybe next year. Nobody wants to be friends with a workaholic. We ain't got time for your ass, man. Alexander the Great, like, that son bitch conquered the entire known world. That's a workaholic. I'm telling you, man. He had to have been a workaholic. But he's also a drunk. Would he have been very pleasant to hang out with? I'm probably not. The reality doesn't matter. What matters is the myth. And I think that myths can become reality even in people's lives, right? When I first, I was living on the streets for a while. It was weird because it was like there was a couple alleys and there was this warehouse that was abandoned and and then there was a couple restaurants that they were like buffet type situations, so they'd have food sitting out at the tables, the buffet tables, like pizza. One of them was pizza, and I think one of them was like how was it? It was stuff like boneless chicken wings and French fries and onion rings and all this like baked food, not necessarily dessert type, but imagine any kind of food you can bake. It was. It may be called Bacon Bits. Or the name of the restaurant might have been Bacon Bits, right? Bacon Bits, but it was a play on how everything was baked, right? All baked food, right? So anyway, they had a buffet table, and so when the buffet was over, they couldn't do anything with that food but throw it away. So there's a couple. Had a hookup where there's a couple people they would just put all this food in these bags and put these bags in a fresh. They would get all these bags, they put the food in individual like bags, paper bags. And then put all these paper bags in a fresh garbage bag, tie it up as if they're taking it out to go to the dumpster and just hand it to one of us. And they would do that at the pizza place and they would do that at the Bacon Bits place. So we were pretty good on food. Water was difficult. There was a water fountain in a park about 3 blocks from where we were. That's pretty much our water source. The bottled water wasn't really a thing back then. There's water fountains everywhere, right? Washing up was an issue that we're not, I don't want to do a deep dive on what that was all like. But the thing was, back then, because of who my brother was known, it was a small town. It was big for the area, but it was still a small town compared to like Chicago or Greensboro, And most people knew my brother because he was big in the drug dealing. He was a con artist, but he's also big in like drug dealing. And we didn't really have gangs, but we definitely had a criminal element. And just everybody knew of him or heard of him. Anytime, any school that I went to that he had been there first. Now there reached a point where we were moving around so much this wasn't true anymore. But for grade 1 through grade 5. My brother was 3 years ahead of me. So his reputation preceded me. He would blow through these schools like a hurricane. Terrorizing. Teachers terrified of him. Principals don't want him sent to the office. This dude was a menace. You think you talk about mythology. You probably think he's a myth and the reality is bullshit. I'm telling you, man, you had to see him to believe him. When he was 6 years old, he started smoking when he was 6 years old. This son of a bitch he was he had the demon in him. He had the devil in him, man. Like, he was never a child. Just always manipulated. 6 years old, man. So the point is, this son of a bitch is from farthest back I can remember. Was terrorizing everything. Just getting away with bloody murder. Smoking. The earliest memory I have, I was about 4, which means he would have been 7, and I remember him smoking. I'm really rambling. I told you I wanted to lock this in and make these shorter. I'm making them longer. Point being, this son of a bitch in the schools, everybody was afraid of him by the time he was over. He eventually get thrown out of these schools. Like, he never lasted more than a semester at any of these schools, right? But a couple years later, here comes another one with the family name, the last name. Hey, so are you so-and-so's brother? Yep. And everybody gave me a wide berth. Nobody messed with me. The teachers are very gentle with me. After they got to know me, they're like, well, I guess he's not like the other one, you know? It was just weird, man. There was such a different vibe for a school I went to that he had been to before versus a school when we started moving around all the time that he had not been to. Well, in this town, he also had this reputation. Worse, because he was older, right? So here I am now. I'm kind of in the mix with the criminal element, because the homeless people and the criminal element are all kind of like mixed together. We're all here in the same neighborhood, right? Hanging out. And there'll be people coming through every day trying to sell drugs or trying to get drugs or whatever. I'm sure there's sex trade. I wasn't really paying attention to that, but I'm sure that was happening too. Whatever the hell's alcohol, of course. So the criminals were there. Anytime anybody found out who my brother was, they treated me like I was Scarface's brother. Like I was Al Capone's brother. And eventually, and this was like a 2-month period, and this is the only time this really happened to me because everybody in this area was part of the element that he would traffic with. And they all knew him. At the time, he was in jail, right? While I was there, he was in jail. So he wasn't around. But his shadow was there. Everybody in the vicinity knew him, knew about him, had heard of him, and didn't want to cross him, and thought I was the same way. Because I was his brother. So because of that, because everybody was treating me this way, I became that. And I became this... the man became the myth. The boy, in this case, became the myth. Now, I'm not saying I was conning anybody, or I was stealing anything. Man, that son of a bitch was steal, man. Wasn't dealing anything, but there was a lot of like confrontational type situations. Hey, where'd my food go? You know, I had one of these bags. You get this big garbage bag, and there are all these individual bags. You each get one. The fuck just happened to my bag? It was right there. Oh shit, here it was. I didn't realize it was yours. Somebody else who didn't have my brother's shadow over him probably wouldn't have got their bag back and would have to fight. And here I was, 14, 125 pounds. I was so skinny. Just, you wouldn't believe how skinny I was. And everybody acted like I was carrying a machete and a shotgun. Just, I would, without even realizing it, I would get in people's face. Hey man, is that my bag? I saw you over there. Now all of a sudden you got 2 bags. Just not even realizing I'm saying this shit that under other circumstances would have got me my ass kicked and stuffed face first into the dumpster. And here we are because of my brother's shadow. Oh, sorry, man. Here it is. They acted like, because it'd be like a 250-pound dude, probably 19. I'm 14, 125 pounds. And I just was acting like I was bigger because everybody had treated me this way. The boy became the myth for that 2 months. It was very weird. It's almost like an out-of-body experience. I would sit there and think at night, I'd be like, they're going to realize I'm not him, right? Then what? Then what happens? Yeah, and then things progressed. I got out of there, and, it became a dream in a way. But sometimes I look back at it and I think about how if everybody expects something, you kind of become the mask. And I've tried to capture that in my scripts. I've never really been able to capture the way it was. Because I feel like if I'd been there for a long enough time, I probably would have became my brother. It was like a transformation, right? Like I would have became the mask, right? Like fully became the myth fully. Because it's very seductive to be that small and one of the youngest people there, and just everybody respects you for you haven't done anything to earn it. So it's a weird out of body experience. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good. I'm glad I got out of it. But at the same time, I think that is an example of the person becoming the myth. What if 100 million people expect you to be something? And just act like you are that something? Do you just become that? The power of that many people. We're here talking about a couple hundred people, maybe. A couple hundred people expected me to be something, and I became that thing. What happens if it's a couple 100 million? Do you become that, right? And I think that's one of the things that I wish that Fate's franchise would delve more into. They keep dancing around it. I keep waiting for that to happen. They keep dancing around the concept of these heroic spirits coming back, and they do it where it's like, Merlin comes back, and it's a woman, and King Arthur comes back, and it's a woman, So they're like playing with expectations. We expect one thing, but the reality is something else. But the Alexander the Great thing is what really tickled my fancy. Is like, we thought he was this, but look at this. This guy, this bitch is more like a Norse god than he is a Greek general. But it fit somehow. It worked. So I don't know. The idea of a myth becoming a reality is something that I just really like. So I don't know that the Fate franchise has really captured that. I wish they would, but if there is an anime out there that kind of talks about this or has this conversation or in some way is kind of like dealing with some periphery of what I'm talking about, point me to it, because it's a conversation I want to have with fiction. Because I tried to write it and I couldn't really catch it. It didn't really work. There was a movie. It was so odd because I saw this movie. I ended up going to a foster home, right? And they had like all the cable channels, right? And so this movie was on. So we're talking about a really old movie, mid '80s, right? It was this boy going to a new school, and there was these bullies, and the bullies were terrible people. And the bullies, there was a specific set of nerds that the bullies messed with. One of them was like a redheaded nerd. He was a computer nerd. And then there was like a couple chess people that were nerds that were getting bullied, and just really, really viciously bullied. And then there were some girls getting bullied by this person. So it was a 3-man bully team, right? They were just terrorizing the whole school. So this new guy comes to school. He eventually kills the 3 bullies. Kills them, right? Get them out because they were terrible. They had done some really horrible things, right? Imagine mid-'80s movies, like the kind of horrible things I'm talking about for high school, right? But what happened was, after he killed the 3 bullies, the people who had been terrorized came to him and said, hey, why don't you be our enforcer, and now we can run this school? Like the redheaded nerd, for instance. He had been getting shit like, his underwear pulled up and it's stuffed in a trash can and rolled down the stairs and shit. Horrible things done to him. But now that they were gone, he wanted to team up with the guy who had killed him and terrorize the school and be the bully now, right? And the new kid was like, he was horrified. He was like, these are bad people. Why would you want to emulate this? So it ended up where it's like he just ended up killing the nerd too. Like anybody else who wanted to become a bully, he killed them as well. I don't remember how it ended up, and I don't remember the name of the movie. But it was really good. I really liked it. But it kind of that was one of the things that spoke to me, because it was kind of like, because he had killed the 3 bullies, everybody saw him as their replacement, and there was something about it, like the bullies got favors presented to them when they would come into school every day, like lunch money and food maybe, and I don't know, some kind of gifts. And people started wanting to do that to him. And he's like, no, don't do that, because you were doing that because you were scared of those people. There's no reason for you to be scared of me. And so it was a commentary on how power corrupts, right? And so that kind of, I saw that not long after this shit happened. And so that kind of spoke to me. But I've never been able to, like, actually do something about this in a script. There's no way to really make it work because it was such a unique situation. And I think it only works on a small scale. Unless you get something like, what if Stalin had had a brother, like, say, a brother who lived in America? Something like that, right? Like, or, you know, there's these situations where these serial killers have family, and the family, like, they have kids. The kids have had to change their names and assume new identities because they don't want to be associated with this murderer, you know? Because they would probably get some of that. But then maybe that's the kind of thing. I don't know, though. But just the idea of a forced group perception forcing itself on a person, an unwilling participant, is interesting to me, right? Like, I think that there's something you can do with that. I've never really been able to really do anything with that creatively myself. But I'd love to see somebody else do it. So if you can think of an anime that does that, that'd be cool. Alrighty, well, let's... I was so confused. I was like, what the hell is this portages shit? Here's the sentence. School days and ReZero terrible-ass portages. What the hell is a portages? Portage is where you carry a boat from one river to the next. Portage, I think. Maybe that's what it's called. Is it portage or is it portage? I've always pronounced it portage, but maybe portage. What the hell does that to do with school days and ReZero? Then I remembered. I wrote protagonist. What I may have said was protag, and then didn't realize autocorrect turned that into portages. Stupid autocorrect. All right, so let's wrap it up with this one. I'd like to do more anime, but I've been so damn long-winded. We don't want this to be a 5-hour podcast, so we're gonna try to be less long-winded next time. We'll see how it goes though. So, School Days and ReZero have terrible-ass protagonists, but they're terrible for different reasons. So I kind of wanted to go into that a little bit of a compare and contrast situation. Look at this son of a bitch. I saw a Reddit post recently, and it said, the worst protagonists in anime, discuss. And, you know, sometimes you can attach a picture to your post. This picture right here was on the post. They're saying he is the worst protagonist in all of anime. And we have Eren sitting right there murdering millions of people. Millions of people died screaming, getting crushed to death. Women, children, kittens, puppies, crushed to death. And they're saying he's not as bad as this son of a bitch. Look at him looking all smug with his little tie and shit. Fuck this dude. So why is he so terrible? I think they're both terrible for the same reason. You know, in ReZero, the protagonist is not as terrible as the other one. But they have the same flaw, which is indecisiveness and selfishness. Like, they're just... neither one of them is mean. Neither one of them is mean-spirited. Neither one of them wants to hurt anybody. And I think that's why people think they're the worst protagonists. They think this sumbitch is worse than Eren because they're not, I'm gonna kill people. I know I'm hurting people and I don't care. It's way more relatable when it's, hey, I didn't want to hurt you, man. I didn't mean to hurt you. Damn. Sorry. It's way more relatable when you don't want to hurt somebody, but you do. And your decision making could be easily analyzed as, hey, if I make this decision or refuse to make a decision, people are going to get hurt. That's relatable. And that's also foreseeable. And then they still don't make a decision, which hurts people, or they make the wrong decision, which hurts people. We've all met people like that. We haven't met anybody like Eren who's stomped to death millions of people. So we can't wrap our minds around that. The horror, the abject horror of that main character killing that many people. We can't conceptualize a number that big of that many people dead, hurting that many people. We can't conceptualize 3 schoolgirls getting their hearts ripped out of their chest. We can conceptualize that because look around. Either look in the mirror, look out the window, or look in your past. And you'll see people in school getting their hearts ripped out, right? So I think that's why it feels like these two are terrible protagonists. Now, the ReZero, he's coming into his own. It's a character arc. And to be fair, I haven't finished either of these anime. I've only seen like 6 episodes of School Days. Maybe he gets better. I don't know. Don't spoil it for me, but maybe he gets better. I do believe the Subaru from ReZero is getting better. We're already starting to see it. So that's pretty good, right? He's not complete trash. He's very frustrating. And this son of a bitch, if you don't watch ReZero, let me just break this down for you real quick. This son of a bitch is supposedly in love with this woman, but has been hanging out with this other woman, so he's like, hey, let's run away together and spend the rest of our lives together. Meanwhile, there's this woman over here who he's actually in love with. But he'll settle for her because she's there. The other one's mad at him and don't want to talk to him. Hey, let's run away for the rest of our lives together. I love you so much, you mean everything to me, I would die for you. To hell, man. Make that shit make sense. And I've seen the apologists in the comments trying to make that shit make sense. But I guess you didn't explain it like I was a 5-year-old because I didn't understand it. I'm trying to say like I'm kidding, but I'm also not kidding because, I don't. Honestly, jokes aside, I still, even though it was explained to me in the comments, I still don't think I understand that offer. He offered to run away with this chick, man, but he's in love with her. So anyway, but we moved past that. He's on the right track now. He's with the one he supposedly loves, for real. Even though he's also with the other one, but not that way. And he seems like he's trying to be a better person. And so far, so good. So, I feel pretty good about it. I think he's on the right track, and he's going to become somebody that I don't have to pull what hair I have left out every time this son of a bitch is on screen trying to make a goddamn decision, right? Hamlet-ass mofo. God, just staring at the skull for the entire play. Come on, man. Make a damn decision. Something. Flip a coin. I don't care. You just make a damn decision. He's getting better. This sumbitch isn't necessarily getting better. Because I've only seen 6 episodes. But literally, he has not made a single decision in the entire anime so far, the 6 episodes I've seen, that I agree with. It was if he's talking about the McRib, or what sandwiches they have at McDonald's? Big Mac. He would order the McRib. I'm like, man, the Big Mac is right there. Why the hell would you order a McRib when you got a Big Mac option? He would, because he don't make a single decision I agree with. Nothing. Chunky or creamy. This idiot would pick creamy. Who the hell picks creamy peanut butter by choice? Who? Who does that? If you ain't picking chunky peanut butter, block me. Because I don't know what the hell you're doing. This sumbitch would pick creamy peanut butter, man. I'm telling you. What the hell are you doing? Well, the only time creamy peanut butter is good in Reese's Cups, because Reese's Cups are excellent. So, they're good there. That is creamy. But otherwise, chunky. So, I think, getting back to the actual point, my rambling point is, I think these are considered the worst because they're the most relatable. Just like Dolores Umbridge is considered the worst villain in Voldemort for a lot of people. Some people hate Dolores Umbridge more than they hate Voldemort. Because we can't conceptualize an immortal, Horcrux having, snake talking, half immortal wizard who wants to kill all humans. But we can't conceptualize a shitty teacher who's an authoritarian and a tyrant who punishes you for no reason. We can conceptualize that because we've seen that in our lives. It was either a family member, it was a boss, or it was a teacher. or maybe the bitch neighborhood neighbor who thinks that she's your mother, right? Certain neighborhoods that can be a thing too. So Dolores Umbridge is relatable. We can conceptualize somebody like that. We can't conceptualize Voldemort. So a lot of people hate her more than they do Voldemort. I think it's the same thing here. I think these people we can relate to because they're actually three-dimensional characters who feel real and feel human, and we've all had a little bit of indecisiveness, so we can even relate to that part of it in our own lives. Yeah, there's that time I really should have did this thing, and it took me an extra day to do it, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have decided immediately. I should have dumped this girl before I went out with her, or whatever. We can relate to that. We can see ourselves in that, or we can see people we've known in that. Where Aaron stomping millions of people, we can't see that. So yeah, I think that's the answer. I think that's relatable. I think that's the answer. I think it's because they're relatable. I'm trying to think of some other examples. I've went to One Piece too many times. The villains in Naruto were so baroque, I'm not sure if we can talk about that. They don't really feel that relatable is what I'm saying. Same thing with Black Clover. They don't really feel that relatable because they're elves and they have all these powers, and so I don't know. I think this is the best. I think Aaron is the best contrast I can get because, and these are the two that the fan base. Oh well, I guess if we were to talk about who the fan base of whatever an anime is hates the most, we got to put that damn dad on from Fullmetal Alchemist on there. People hate that son of a bitch. He was in one episode of one anime, and then the other man he was in like 2 or 3 episodes, and that was it. People hate that son of a bitch. So yeah, and that's a little bit less relatable. Although we can relate to a father who's a workaholic and at the sacrifice of his kids. In this case it was literal, but we can relate to that. But yeah, I think that's going to have to do it here. Let's go ahead and go to the Q&A, and then I'll come back and sign off. All right, so here we go with the feedback portion of this podcast, and let's go ahead and get straight into it. Now, I had already replied to the comments for the actual podcast, so this is just replying to the comments from the feedback portion, which I posted several days later. So if anybody's missing anything, I don't think anybody's commented on old podcast episodes, but if you have and I didn't do that, just remind me, tell me which podcast it was. I'll go back and look at it. Starting off with Ariel. Is Shigami in love in war? Is Shigami in Love is War might not really impact the main plot between Kaguya and the president, but he does have his own side storylines, like Spas with the Lino, newest member. I guess her name is Lino. I liked her a lot. She was cool. And pursuing the older girl that's in cheer with him. Yeah, I liked him too. He's a lot of fun. In fact, I think he gets fleshed out and focused on more than Fujiwara, secretary, like how we saw his middle school backstory. Yeah. So in my eyes, he's the main character. I get what you're saying. What I'm saying is we have different definitions. My definition is who affects the main plot of the story, right? So in my definition, who affects the main plot of the story is president, vice president, and minion, because they're the only 3 who are in on what's going on. Everybody else are pawns at their command. They're the puppet masters. They're pitting people against you. It's a shadow war, a proxy war, in a lot of cases, because they'll use other people against each other, right? It's a proxy war and a shadow war that nobody in the main story is aware of. So think about Chuck is a good example, where you have Chuck, his sister's husband. I think they were married, and then his the CIA people, like there was a man and a woman that were his handlers, right? And eventually his best friend all knew about the fact that Chuck was a spy, and there's other spy organizations in other countries that they're at war with, right? They're spy war with, not necessarily a hot war. Then you had, but for a while, like for instance, for a while the sister and husband didn't know anything about it. But the other people who worked at the store There was the couple losers and some other people like the manager of the store, and there was a couple other people. For the whole life of this series, I'm pretty sure I don't remember the final season. I don't think I watched it one time and then I did this series kind of fell off. But for the entire run of the show, they didn't know what was going on. They had no idea that Chuck was a spy and all this spy shit was happening all around them. So they're not part of the main story, which means they're not main characters. You know, the main story, what the premise of the story, and only people involved in that can be considered main characters. Now, this is my own personal definition, like, you know, because those other people that were regulars, I think they're, you know, the series regulars may be what you're talking about here. Series regulars. Series regulars, they're in every episode, and you can be elevated to a series regular, by the way. So, yeah, he didn't start the series as a series regular because, you know, he wasn't even in a few episodes to begin with. But if this was live action, that actor would have been promoted to a series regular by season 2 and in season 3 because he was in every episode. He gets a significant amount of screen time. He gets his own storylines. We're in his point of view. And if it was live action, the actor would be getting a series regular contract, you know, which among other things means if they don't appear in an episode, they still get paid. So if there's 20 episodes in a season, they get paid for 20 episodes, even if they're only in 3 episodes. Which is why, by the way, sometimes when a live action character gets killed off early in a season, but he was a regular, you'll see him show up in flashbacks and hallucinations and shit like that. Because they they might as well put him to work. They paid him for the whole year, right? That happened in Smallville. So anyway, he's definitely a series regular. But for me, just my own very limited, which I know you disagree with, so we're just, you know, we disagree and it's fine. Like, we're just disagreeing. But in my own limited definition, you have to know the main plot to be the main character. You have to be aware of it. You have to be participating in it. You know, that's the way I see it. But, you know, as far as like them being, he's definitely a series regular. And it is an interesting question. Is he more important than Fujiwara? Yeah, we never really. Her character is at the service of everybody else in the show. We don't get anything, but we don't know what she's thinking. We don't know. I think we know she has a sibling, right? I was going to say we didn't know about her family, but I seem to remember her having a sibling. And, we definitely don't know anything about her having friends or what her relationship is with her parents, I believe, or any of that shit. So I don't know. I think he ends up being more important than her. Now, I think she's one of the funniest people in the series, but that's because she's at the service of everybody else, right? She helps everybody else, right? Like she's the straight man when the other person is the goofy one, and she's the goofy one, and the other person's the straight man, and then she's at the service of, you know. So yeah, he's probably more important than her, but you know. I think that pretty much covers it. Like, I think we just have different definitions, and that's okay. You know. All right, Hunter Stone. Thanks for answering my comment. I got what I expected out of it, or what I wanted out of it. You coming back after taking a break and realizing I already said the theater thing. I already said other than theater plays was hilarious. That is funny because you had specifically done it, so you had really put a lot of thought into this, right? Where I hadn't had a chance to put a lot of thought into it. So, but then I took a break and I put more thought into it. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds vaguely familiar, the whole theater thing. I went back and looked at what you said, and I was like, God damn it. And I hate wasting my time. Like, say I look down and it's not recording. I've been talking for 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's say it hadn't been recorded. I look down, I'd be pissed. Wouldn't be throwing things across the room, but I'd definitely be shouting dumbass at myself. Because goddamn, man, you know, it's just stupid. So I hate wasting my time. I would have to say everything I just said again, you know, and I hate doing that. So when I've been talking for 10 minutes, other than the fact I don't take myself seriously, so it's like, hey, we might as well laugh at me, you know, for being a dumbass. But I also don't want to waste your time. So it is there is a certain amount of algebra there where it's like, okay, I just spent 10 minutes talking about something that's not what you said, or like that you had said exclude this. Or maybe sometimes in other cases where it's been, I thought he was person A when he's actually person B. He's a brother, not the lover. And I'm just sitting there talking 10 minutes why I didn't think he was a good lover for the main character. Turns out I was thinking about another character, and the one I'm talking about is actually, like, that's wasting your time. And unfortunately, I've had to cut that sometimes when I'm just literally just wasting your time. I had a simple misunderstanding that everybody watching this would have realized in 3 seconds. They don't want to sit through 10 minutes of me not knowing that I made a mistake. Some of it can be entertaining, some of it can be thoughtful, and some of the points can still stand, even though I had the wrong character in mind. But a lot of times I just cut it because I don't want to waste the audience's time, right? The worst thing you could do in anything, music, look at the Beatles self-indulgent Hey Jude or CCR self-indulgent Heard It on the Grapevine. Those songs are wasting the audience's time. Even Alice's Restaurant, which I really like, is wasting the audience's time. Tighten it up. It's called an editor, dumbass. The worst thing you can do, no matter what it is, painting, poems, novels, all the media we watch, any form of media you can imagine, songs, any of that shit, is waste the audience's time. That's the ultimate crime. So I try to never do that, and I hate it. That's one of the reasons I hate the recaps. It's like, what's her name? Shelley. She's got cancer, so I'm not shit talking her. I would feel bad if I did at this point. But she just announced she's got cancer last week. But one thing she does that annoys me is she will recap the episode. Now, we are watching a reaction because we've seen the series before. We're aware of what happened last episode. We've seen it 5 times. You've only seen it once. She will spend 3 to 4 minutes at the beginning of every reaction recapping what we saw last time. And you're wasting our time. I always skip it. That's just a complete and total waste of our time. That's why I don't do that, right? I try to get into it as fast as possible. That's what people are here for. If I have thoughts, I'll put them at the end. Or if it's an edited reaction, I'll intermingle it, right? So, I just don't want to waste the audience's time. So, I debated that. I was like, well, should I just cut all that out? All the theater stuff? And it was it may have been 10 minutes. But ultimately, I thought that was still a conversation worth having. Like theater, the theater adaptation. That is a very interesting conversation. Is that even an adaptation? You can pretty much just do it no for no. It's about the same amount of time we're talking about. I saw Les Miserables, the movie with Hugh Jackman and other people, and Russell Crowe. I assume that was just a straight up note for note replacement of the play, which has its uses. I think it makes much more sense to have a play become a movie, because not everybody can go to New York and watch the good actors, the really premier actors and premier production quality of a Broadway play. But we can all go see a movie or rent a movie or stream a movie or whatever, right? So, play to movie makes sense to me. Movie to play doesn't. That's just a cash grab at that point. I think you're wasting our time. But then, they'll add extra songs, like all the Disney movies that became plays. They added a bunch of songs, so there's some value there. It's bonus material. But yeah, so I just thought that was ultimately I decided it was a conversation worth having, and it's always fun to laugh at my mistakes. I just don't want to overdo it, right? Because again, wasting time and running a joke in the yes, I have a bad memory. There's only so many times you can do that as a joke. So even in intros to some reactions, I'll make a stupid mistake or forget something. It's 50-50 whether I cut it out. Sometimes I think, okay, that's probably funny. And then other times I'm like, yeah, I'm just wasting your time. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was funny. I'm glad you thought it was funny. That's the ultimate endorsement. Because there's a lot of things I do that I think is funny, and I never hear a word about it from anybody. The different things, like little intros, or I'll put a little picture or something, or just drop a meme in there or whatever. Have some kind of outro. One of my last rewinds, there's these assholes with these motorcycles kept driving by and parking right next to the van where I was recording. And so I was talking, and then he turned on the motorcycle, revved, and apparently you have to rev the engine for like a minute before you can leave. I don't know why, but he sat there next to the van for a minute with the engine running. Then he finally backed out and left. The whole time I'm recording. Because I thought he was going to be a lot faster than I would have just turned it off. The whole time I'm recording. And then, finally, after he left, I somehow maintained my train of thought and just kept talking. And so I cut that part out and stuck it at the end. And somebody told me they thought that was funny, right? But a lot of times I'll put that effort into something and I never get anything back. That tells me that was not a good joke. if nobody says it's funny, it's probably not funny. So that's and then I use this information moving forward, right? So maybe if there is another funny thing where I'm talking something and interrupts me, I just keep talking, which I think was probably the best part of the joke because you're wondering where the hell is this going? Because I'm talking, all of a sudden you just hear the motorcycle for like a long time. It's like almost 90 seconds. So if anybody stuck around for that, they're like, "Where the hell? What is he doing? Where the hell is he going with this?" And then I just start talking again. I thought that shit was funny, and at least one other person did. So it's a gut thing. But then sometimes when I get feedback from people, this was funny, that was funny, whatever, then that'll encourage me to go down that road a little bit more next time. But maybe not a 90-second motorcycle thing, but something else. Some jackhole standing next to me talking about something that doesn't realize somebody's recording right next to him. Or one time, I was doing some concert gigs, and so I'm sitting there at the van from 11 p.m. until 1 p.m. because it's after the concert's over. They hired performers to entertain the crowd, so not everybody would leave at once because there's a massive traffic jam when everybody leaves at once. So if you can keep some people there and some people leave, you have a more measured exit, right? So they hired entertainers to entertain people as they're walking out of the stadium. They just delay them. The longer you can delay them, the better. So he's over there next to the stadium and he's entertaining people. I'm sitting in the van, and these people that had left are walking past and they're going to the cars and they're leaving. A lot of them are drunk or high or both. But I'm sitting there and I was editing. But if I'd been recording, this woman comes up. She's clearly blasted out of her mind, completely drunk. Presses her face against the window of the van, and it says, "What are you doing?" And I started to explain, and she just walked away without another word. I got like a sentence into my explanation, and she just walked away. And that was super annoying. That pissed me off. It's like, why did I bother answering her, right? But if that had been recording, that would have been really funny. Yeah, that would have been... I wish I had been recording at that time. I'm going to be recording tonight, by the way. I'm doing a rewind, and I may do some podcast stuff, which you have already seen, because this Q&A is going to be at the end, yeah. We'll see. We'll see if I have time for it. All right, Hunter Stone, finally, for him. I agree that someone wouldn't watch an anime only for its animation, but I have heard of people only watch an anime for its fight scenes. I don't imagine they do that for very long, because what can we do with that, right? Here's a question. Do you find immersive, realistic, live-action fight scenes better than anything that can happen in anime? And what I mean by that is, The Matrix had live-action fight scenes, but I never felt anything, especially the second two movies. The first one was, a lot of practical stuff. Second two movies is just a bunch of CGI, characters, puppets bouncing around, looking weightless. Like, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I've never seen it, but I've seen them dancing on treetops and stuff. So unrealistic, it might as well be animated. But grounded, for instance, I think the fight scenes in the first couple Transporter movies are some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in my life, and they're fight scenes with a sense of humor. They're funny. Jackie Chan also had fight scenes with a sense of humor. They're funny, but they're also exciting. I think a Transporter fight scene is better than anything I've ever seen in anime and ever will see in anime. Especially because a lot of it's magic, and they're just standing in the air, and the standing in the air thing is getting really old to me. Like, I don't know why anime characters can't just have their feet on the ground. And for me, like I've said many, many times, your strength of throwing a punch comes from the gravity the gravity pulling your mass to the earth, and you resisting that with your muscles gives you the strength to throw a punch. If you're weightless, if you're up in orbit weightless, and you throw a punch, half the force is going to push you backwards, half the force is going to push them this way, and they're not going to feel very much, if anything. It can be the strongest punch you've ever thrown. It'd be like throwing a punch in a pool underwater, right? Whereas if you have your feet on the ground, the gravity is what gives you the strength to throw the punch. So you have to have your feet on the ground for the punch to do anything. And these people are just floating in the air, and I guess magically they have the mass, right? But that's another thing, too. I do find a lot of the fights are interesting because they are magical fights. They're not just, slugging it out, or even with, like, edge weapons or weapons we're comfortable with, or we remember. We've maybe seen it, but I haven't seen a Mace or Cat o' Nine Tails or whatever. I haven't seen these things, but we've seen them in media enough that they feel grounded and realistic. But an energy blade coming out of somebody's arm and just using that as kind of a impromptu lightsaber, and just the magic and the hockey and all this stuff, fireballs and the blasts of water and wind, water bending and all this shit. We don't have any frame of reference for that. We don't know what the power scale is. We can't intrinsically in our mind be like, okay, I have a gut feeling person A is going to win versus person B. So I'm thinking, actually, now that I was thinking about this, it's probably worthy of a mini podcast, because it's a very involved fight scenes in anime. I should probably just talk about it there. There's a lot to talk about there, but just to put a button on this, we are familiar, even if you've never been in a fist fight yourself. You can see person A and person B, and they're about to have a fist fight, and have a gut feeling who's going to win and why. And then as you watch the fight, you will know, without anybody having to explain to you, without any narration, why person A beat person B. Why somebody lost and why somebody won. Because maybe somebody's bigger, but the other one's faster. Maybe one lost his focus, got distracted. Maybe the dude had a dirty trick where he throws dirt in his eyes. Whatever. You don't need somebody to explain to you how somebody won. And one of the flaws of anime fighting is somebody typically has to explain it. Sometimes after the fact, sometimes during the fight. The best ones, like Naruto, explain the mechanics before the fight. And so when you get into it, you should, if you can remember all this shit, which can be a struggle for some people. You should know immediately why they fought, just why somebody won and why somebody lost. Just like, in real life. But it's just a struggle, and it's a massive writing problem, and I don't know how I would do it myself. You have to somehow hammer it into the people's brains. Demon Slayer does a pretty good job. It's hammered it because they have all these training sessions. Hammer into people's brains why somebody won and why somebody lost. But it's never going to feel as natural, as realistic as a live action fight or a fight that's involving fists or just regular weapons we're familiar with, because we're familiar with those things. But yeah, I'll save it for a mini pod, because there's actually a lot to say about this, and I don't want to bog down this podcast. The Q&A with this, which is when we really weren't even talking about that. You're just talking about fight scenes. But yeah, I can't imagine people wanting to see this shit just for fight scenes, but sometimes people watch clips of old football games and it's the highlights. So I guess that's probably the same thing. And I will admit, Attack of the Clones is not a great movie, but the last 45 minutes are fantastic action. Some of the best action I had seen, at least at that. So when I got it on DVD, I would just start it with about the moment that they enter the arena. From there to the end of the movie, I just watch, because it's wall-to-wall action, right? It's like 45 minutes straight, wall-to-wall action. Wonderful. And it's all fighting and stuff, right? Various kinds of fighting. They're fighting creatures, they're fighting clones, they're fighting robots, laser sword fights, Jedi magic fight. Just incredible. Really, really good shit, right? And I love the final lightsaber battle where it's like 2-on-1, then it's 1-on-1, and then both of the two had gotten their asses kicked, but then another one enters the field. It's just all really good shit, man. So, I can understand wanting to watch it just for the fights, because I did that. Probably at least a dozen times I just put on DVD and watched the last 45 minutes. Good shit, man. So I get it. But I don't know that's I don't know how long you would get out. How long that would be fun for you. Alright, final one from Ariel. You were still in Season 3, Swordsmith Village arc, when you were talking about the Hashira flashbacks being about randos. I think one of those, the love Hashira, didn't have to do with the demons. She just wanted someone strong like her to love her. That's a very shallow motivation, but you know what that's not? Some sad, depressing crap, right? It's just... And I guess, so she didn't lose anybody. What you're telling me is she didn't lose anybody. She wanted to fight to help people. And I'm assuming I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's not just there to date and to find somebody to smash and love. She actually wants to help people, right? I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt from what you're saying. Like, there are people who get jobs to just hook up, I guess, you know? Probably teenagers, you know, there's a lot of hooking up happening in fast food places, I'm sure. I literally don't remember anything about that. It makes me want to go back and watch her flashback again because, man, I don't remember a damn word of that, man. Nothing. And I like her character. So it's probably going to take a couple years for the next movie to come out. So in the meantime, I may rewatch at least that, right? I'm doing another rewatch, so I'm not going to reveal yet what that is. This is Matakoya. It might be fun for you to watch House of Dragon once season 4 ends, because supposedly it'll all be out and you can binge it. Yes, but is it say I have 6 shit sandwiches here. Is it better to eat one of them and wait 2 weeks and then eat another one, wait 2 weeks, or is it better to eat all 6 at once? They both suck. Shit sandwiches are terrible whether you eat them one at a time or you eat them all at once. Like the shit I've been getting, because I don't care about spoilers anymore. I've seen a couple clips and heard a couple things that happened. God damn, it sounds stupid. The only thing that I kind of wish I'd stayed engaged with the fandom was, because people have been bitching about this since season 1. I don't know what the fuck Nettles is, but people are so mad that Nettles is not part of the story. Who gives a shit, man? God, the bitching and the whining has just been off the charts, man. And yes, I haven't read it, so maybe Nettles is the most awesome character, I assume it's a person, ever created. Maybe a dragon, though. I'm a little unclear on that. Nettles could actually be a dragon. Which, if Nettles is a dragon, then that would actually be a little bit better, I think. And by the way, please do not give me I don't give a fuck. If I cared who or what Nettles was, I would have looked it up online. Don't tell me in the comments. I don't want to know. I don't care. It's funnier for me if I don't know at this point. And I'm never going to find out, right? So please don't tell me. Delete the comment you just posted. Because you paused the video and made the comment and then continued. It would make more sense if it was a dragon. Because, dragons have stupid names. But God damn, is that a stupid name for a person? I originally got the feeling it was a person, but then people just kept talking about dragons, so I'm not sure. But if it's a person that has a fucking stupid name for a person, and they're whining so much, I've just rebelled at this point. Now I'm glad they don't have Nettles, whatever it is, right? And the other thing that bothers me is they keep doing is there's a specific line of dialogue. They did this with Knights of the Seven Kingdoms as well, right? Right after what would have been the end of episode 4 of Knights of the Seven Kingdoms, Doug turns to the metal worker, whatever the hell that's called, the guy who made the armor. Doug turns to the guy who made the armor and says, I don't understand why, because the crowd was cheering for him. He says, I don't understand why the crowd is supporting me in this. He says, because you're a knight who didn't forget his vows, right? Cool line. Didn't make the episode. And the showrunner even said he regretted not putting it in there. They just forgot or something, But the episode had already conveyed that. Like, we got it. And people are so pissed that one line of dialogue, that 2 seconds of screen time wasn't in there. They're so angry. When people like me who had just... I read the books, but it's so long ago I don't remember them. So I say people like me hadn't read the books. I actually have read the books, the Knights of Seven Kingdom books. I just don't remember them. Right? Nothing. Jack shit. A few things came back to me as I watched the season. But man, I remembered a few little odd... I remember there was like a Targaryen who was pissed at a puppet show or something. And then I remembered he had to fight in a tournament or something. But that was all I remembered. I don't remember jack shit about the last 2. Nothing. There's not a single image, not a single concept or nothing from the last 2 books. So I think I like the first one better. I don't know. But anybody who hasn't read the books, you can't miss what you never knew about. Right? I've always said that. In editing, I've always had those arguments with the directors. I'm like, damn, I wish we could have gotten this shot. I'm like, the audiences are going to miss that shot because they don't know about it. They never saw it. We can regret that we didn't get that shot, but they're going to be fine. The audience don't care, man. These precious book readers, and then apparently there was a line in this last episode of House of Dragons where it's like something about Kristen Cole, and, you know, he says something or somebody says something to him, and they didn't use the line, and everybody's pissed off. Who gives a shit? Jesus. You know, it'd be different if the line had been there and somebody edited it out. If I'm rewatching Empire Strikes Back and he doesn't say, "No, I'm your father," if they just don't have that line in there, yeah, I'm going to be pissed, because that's stupid. Just like the old Greedo shot first crap is stupid. I remember the old version of the same thing. This is an adaptation. It's a different thing, right? So getting pissed off about one line of dialogue is just, you're just showing your ass on the internet. It's just so goofy, so cringe, whatever the words the kids are using these days. You know, so something that really pissed me off today, speaking of kid slang, I put a poll up on this. Apparently bruh, you know, BRUH, has a plural version now. They have pluralized bruh, which is BURHZZ. And I was overcome with rage when I saw that. So effing stupid. God damn it, stupid. But yeah, I don't see myself ever watching this crap. There is one thing I was spoiled on. It's something that happens in the Battle of God's Eye that I will watch that clip. I'll watch that scene. Because I've been really looking. I was spoiled on that before I ever started the series. And one of the reasons I started the series, besides people requesting it back in the day, was that I wanted to see that scene. I was like, wow, that sounds badass. That sounds amazing. I'm not going to say it here. You know, I don't want to spoil anybody. But there is something that happens in the Battle of God's Eye that just, the descriptions, it sounds like one of the most coldest, badass, gangsterous things I've ever seen in my life. I want to see that. I'm going to watch that. But other than that, I don't give a shit. So, you know, I'm not going to watch it. But, you know, I'm glad you like it. All right, well, that's it for the Q&A. Now I'm going to get to actually recording the goddamn podcast. And I recorded the podcast. So this is it. Didn't even realize I changed back in the same shirt. So I have two of these. Just the same shirt, but not the same shirt, if you know what I mean. So I try to vary it up so it doesn't look like I just wear the same shirt all the time. But, you know, Dad had a bunch of these. And so I took them over after he passed. So anyway, that'll be a wrap. I need to find a way to get more different anime in these. I was way too long-winded this time. Maybe it's because I'm under the gun and I know I need to do a podcast fast. So you would think that'd be counterintuitive, but it takes more time to be concise and brief. You got to put more thought into it, and I didn't have a lot of time for this one. So I just let myself go, I guess. I don't know. But I thought maybe what I could do is some kind of a clock and like a rapid fire lightning round of talking about anime. Maybe, you know what might be fun? A lightning round where I get 90 seconds per anime. I have a bunch of anime written on sheets of paper in a bowl. I pull one out randomly. It's the name of an anime, and I just talk about it for 90 seconds or less. Yeah, I'll probably go over time every time. But, you know, maybe that'd be fun. Something like this. Because I'm still just mostly talking about the ones I'm currently watching rather than the old ones. And I want to get to more old ones. But, man, like I said, I got 3 or 4 in, and I was already an hour into this podcast. I was like, God damn. So, it is what it is. Try to do better next time. Although I do think I'm going to have a main topic next time. There's something I'm cooking on. We'll see. We'll see how much work I get done in the upcoming month. I also need to get back to more mini podcasts. There was just not that long ago, I was cranking out about 3 a month, and I don't think I did any in July. So I need to get back to some more mini podcasts. That's going to be my focus in August. And then in September, I'll try to get 2 of them out. So the first one on the first of the month is going to be with the main topic. And then maybe later in the month will be another one of these that has all the corners in it. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think.